Chapter 23:45. Then the Iron Soulfish said, "The demon race in the Sky Barbarian continent are all outsiders. The real demon race is far away in the vast star field. Because the Sky Barbarian continent has thin energy and weak martial arts, the god-slaying, demon-attracting secret technique has only heard of its name and has never seen its real body. Who would have thought that someone in Heaven Berserker country would be able to cultivate such a demonic technique? The disappearance of the demonic chi in that Sky Barbarian sect and your growing weakness, is that also related to someone practicing this demonic art?" Su immediately connected the two together. The Iron Soulfish coughed weakly and nodded heavily. Draw devil, draw devil. Draw devil chi from heaven and earth, gather it in one's body, and achieve supreme cultivation. Without the demonic energy, the Iron Soulfish's condition naturally deteriorated day by day. "Damn it, who is it?" Chi Feihong said fiercely. Su immediately began to recall everything he knew about Devil Chi. Ever since he came out of the Barbarian Demon Forest, the first time he encountered Devil Chi was in the Divine Sword Valley at the Shunjian Gate. At that time, Yin Lingfeng was possessed by the devil and almost killed him. After that, resentment grew in the Nine Stars Valley, and martial arts became demonic. Chun Yu and the others used the demonic way to turn the Nine Stars Calamity, Sea, into a demonic territory. From then on, Su Yi went to the Holy Mountain Academy and found the Iron Soulfish in the Li clan, thoroughly learning about the demon race. Now, he had the Crimson Dragon Divine Sword in his hands, but he had never thought of a good way to completely eliminate the Crimson Dragon from the world. Coming out of the Pagoda Sea of Flames proved that the Crimson Dragon Divine Sword could withstand extreme heat. Fire attacks were probably ineffective against the Crimson Dragon. Yin Lingfeng. It must be Yin Lingfeng. These three cold words came out of Su Yi's mouth. Chi Feihong and the Iron Soulfish were shocked. The Iron Soulfish's pale lips twitched slightly. He suddenly recalled the scene of Yin Lingfeng transforming into a demonic shadow back in the demon-slaying sect's demonic territory. He said softly, "But didn't you severely injure that guy?" Su Yi nodded his head, and his eyes instantly darkened as a chilling light shot out from his eyes. He roared in anger, "But when I retrieved the Crimson Dragon Divine Sword in front of everyone during the Heavenly Wind ranking tournament and prepared to kill Yin Lingfeng, did you forget who it was that saved Yin Lingfeng? The aura at that time? It seems to be." The Iron Soul puppet tried his best to recall what happened at that time. Chi Feihong interrupted and said, "It's the Long family. Mother of Asterisk Kerr, Draconis is really haunting us." Chi Feihong spat and looked at Su Yi. Su Yi, on the other hand, was unusually calm. "Chi Nu is my brother. Old Tai. Do you have a way to save him?" Su Yi had always been unable to touch the demonic aura. Compared to venting his anger on the Long family, it was more important to suppress his anger and save Chi Nu. The Iron Soulfish hesitated for a while, unable to make up his mind. He said softly, "I can only transfer my demonic intent to this little guy and temporarily seal his demonic aura. You have to think of a way to completely remove the demonic aura from Chi Nu's body." Su Yi looked at the Iron Soulfish and gritted his teeth. He was struggling internally. The Iron Soulfish had made it very clear that this was only a temporary solution. The real solution was to find a way to control the demonic aura from the Long family. Su Yi nodded heavily and looked at the Iron Soulfish resolutely. "Let's save him for now. Can we really not save Chi Nu if this continues?" In an instant, Chi Feihong, the Iron Soulfish, and Su Yi looked at each other in dismay. The Iron Soulfish's lips curled slightly and said softly, "You still haven't changed. But let's make a deal, kid. After this, you have to promise me something else. No matter what it is, you have to do it." "I promise," Su Yi said without hesitation. Chi Nu was the last bloodline of the deep sea crimson gold beasts. There couldn't be any problems. The Iron Soulfish smiled gently and floated out of the entrance. A majestic and destructive black aura surged out, and violent black mysterious patterns spread out from Su Yi's limbs. Suddenly, The cold and gloomy aura made everyone from Tian Yao School feel a trace of fear. They didn't dare to breathe loudly. Xiongzhan and the others saw that Su Yi was also surrounded by black, mysterious patterns. Just as they were about to speak, they were stopped by Shangguan Shiwei. In front of them, Su Yi slowly closed his eyes. When he opened them again, the look in his eyes changed greatly. Countless dark phantoms surged in her starry eyes. She shook her arm forward, and immediately 10 black rays of light gushed out from her fingertips. The unparalleled pressure caused the souls of all the living beings present to tremble and collapse. Whoosh! As the black energy gathered more and more, the entire secret room was enveloped by black clouds once again. If Su Yi turned around, he would see the shocked expressions on the faces of everyone from Tian Yao School. This was the black, ghostly cloud from that day. Seeing this ghostly cloud with their own eyes again, the elders and experts from Tian Yao School were petrified. In the next second, Su Yi's tall and straight body was enveloped by the black, mysterious patterns in front of everyone's horrified eyes. When he opened his eyes, 2 rays of light, one black and one red, alternated with each other. It was as if the sun and the moon were shining together. The rays of light slowly spread out, and under the fluctuations, energy burst out. However, there was a strange pressure that surged through heaven and earth. Such pressure was majestic to the extreme. It was completely different from the pressure of heaven and earth energy that everyone had encountered before. At the same time, it had a majestic and domineering aura that looked down on the world. At that moment, under such pressure, everyone's legs turned to jelly and prostrated. Plop! Even the Origin Emperor Realm experts couldn't withstand the demonic will of the Iron Soulfish. One by one, they prostrated themselves on the ground. They couldn't resist. The birth of the Origin Demon, the reincarnation of all things, the origin of life and death, the return of heaven and earth, worship the imperial court above, and worship the gods below. Within the light, a clear murmur slowly floated out. Everyone's gaze fluctuated, and they were so shocked that they didn't know what to do. In a short moment, an enormous amount of demonic energy erupted, and black waves surged towards the scarlet pheasant. Rumble! Following the shout, the black clouds in the sky instantly smashed down, as if the world was collapsing. High in the sky above the secret room, divine thunder rumbled, and a dazzling ray of light shot out from the black rays of light. When everyone opened their eyes again, only faint energy threads were left in the void. Looking at the strange phenomenon in the sky, everyone's faces turned pale. Phew! At that moment, Su Yi had already returned to half-squatting beside Chi Nu's huge body had already returned to human form, and the black, mysterious patterns on his body had faded away. The black clouds that enveloped Su Yi had also faded away. Everything was like a dream, and it didn't happen. Phew! Shortly after, Chi Nu was pulled up by Su Yi, and the Origin Supreme technique was activated once again. Chapter 2346. Boundless, desolate energy bloomed in the air and enveloped the unconscious Chi Nu like a wave. Once again, Su Yi peeked into Chi Nu's body and found that the black blood clots in Chi Nu's body had already dissolved. However, the fine black energy remained in his meridians and could not be removed no matter how hard he tried. After a while, after confirming that Chi Nu was fine, Su Yi got up and handed Chi Nu over to Xiongzhan, Hu Qi, and the others. Sister Shiwei, Chi Nu is fine now, but he still needs to rest for a few days. Please take good care of him. Shangguan Shiwei's furrowed brows relaxed instantly, and she heaved a sigh of relief. She smiled and nodded as she sized up the man in front of her. Su Yi's demonic eyebrows had a steadiness that others did not have. With Su Yi's return, everything seemed to fall into place, so natural. Sect Leader, it's really great. Now that you're back, everyone's confidence is back. Sect Leader, you've become so strong. Sect Leader, when will you teach us martial arts? A group of young disciples from Tian Yao School looked at Su Yi with sparkling eyes. Their faces were filled with admiration and respect, and they were extremely excited. After not seeing each other for 5 years, Su-yi had already grown into a super powerhouse. In front of the people from Tian Yao School, he was like a mountain that stood at the top. Su-yi smiled faintly, but Elder Shangwan, Su said in a serious tone, "Sect leader, why were there black clouds on your body just now?" As soon as he finished speaking, everyone's eyes trembled. Su-yi's body was indeed covered by black clouds, but compared to the black ghost clouds that engulfed Kanglan City, Su-yi's black energy was much purer. Due to some coincidences, I came into contact with this demonic aura, but fortunately, I can control it. Saving Qi Nu can be considered as God's will. Immediately, Xiong Lu, Ubu, and the other elders looked at each other, sighing in relief, then nodded at Su-yi with a smile. Sect Master has just returned. Let's not talk about this. Let Sect Master have a good rest first. Shangguan Shiwei stood at the side and smiled sweetly, indicating that everyone should not gather together. Later, under the instructions of Su-yi, the people of Tian Yao School came out of the sacrificial chamber and cleaned up Kanglan City. As soon as they came out, everyone saw the bloody scene in Songlan City and sighed, feeling sad. After a rough calculation, almost all the beasts in Songlan City were annihilated. The losses were extremely tragic. When the Black Cloud attacked, not a single person was left alive. Azure Water City was destroyed because of Su-yi. In addition to helping Qi Nu heal, Su-yi spent most of his time helping Azure Water City rebuild. This was the only consolation Su-yi could give to the deceased Akatsuki and the yellow-robed elder. The huge Hall of Heroes was quickly built. Thousands of candles lit up like stars, symbolizing the brave citizens of Songlan City who were loyal to Azure Water City. That night, the moon was bright and the stars were few. Su-yi sat alone in front of the Hall of Heroes. Behind him, the huge statue of Akatsuki looked extraordinarily mighty. Two fierce tiger eyes shot out beams of light, overlooking the entire Songlan City. Below, the sea of trees and mountains were undulating. In the depths of the forest, wild beasts roared. Everything seemed to have returned to that day 5 years ago. Su-yi's eyes glowed. In the dark night, his eyes were like an eagle's, looking down in a daze. "Bro Tai, it seems that Big Brother is really gone," Chi Fei-hong said in a low voice, looking at Su-yi. "Oh." Su-yi peered into his meridians. There was still a faint black imprint at his entrance, but the iron soulfish had completely disappeared. Because Yun Lingfeng had cultivated the god-slaying demon-attracting secret art, the devil chi in the thin heaven and earth energy was even thinner. The iron soulfish knew that it could no longer borrow a body to reincarnate. At the last moment, the iron soulfish proposed to save Qi Nu's life in exchange for Su-yi's promise. Recalling the scene when he saved Qi Nu, the iron soulfish asked Su-yi to bring the last bit of devil chi from the iron soulfish back to the realm of 10,000 demons when he left the heavenly barbarian region. The realm of 10,000 demons was said to be extremely far away from the realm of gods. According to the iron soulfish, the devil race and the god race had never interfered with each other. However, after the last primordial calamity, the god race and the devil race fought. The chaos demon emperor, who had always been righteous, evil, and demonic, was also suppressed by the god race in this primordial calamity. During the demon emperor's wedding, the great calamity broke out. The primordial world collapsed. Thinking of this, and looking at the faint black imprint in his entrance, Su-yi knew that it was the iron soulfish's devil chi primordial spirit. As the devil chi in the heaven and earth energy became thinner and thinner, the iron soulfish's primordial spirit would also become weaker and weaker, and eventually turn into smoke and dust. Su-yi did not have much time left. Everything rushed through his mind. His mother, Yun Jing, his identity as the demon emperor, and the iron soulfish's return to its roots. The battle with the Long family was inevitable. At this moment, Su-yi's mind was much clearer. He quietly watched the faint devil chi grow all over the mountains and plains. The plan of revenge against the Long family gradually took shape in his mind. Su Yi's soft voice sounded. Shangwan Shui tidied her skirt and sat down gently. She followed Su Yi's gaze and remained silent. Sister Shiwei, has Qi Nu woken up? Su Yi asked. Shangwan Shui nodded. After a few days of treatment, Qi Nu's condition had improved significantly. At the latest, he would wake up tomorrow and be fully healed. Hearing this, Su Yi said softly, "It's time for us to go out. For 5 years, you must have suffered a lot by staying here, right?" Hearing Su Yi's words, Shangwan Shiwei's heartstrings were pulled. A unique masculine scent came with the night wind, and Shiwei unconsciously leaned closer to Su Yi. "Compared to us, Su Yi, you must have suffered a lot in the past few years. For you to have your current achievements, I don't even dare to imagine the pain you have experienced." Shiwei's voice was like water, gently flowing into Su Yi's heart. Su Yi resolutely looked at the Akatsuki statue behind him and said fiercely, "I once promised Grandma Shangwan that I would protect you. Spirit Ancient Village, Tian Yao School, and Azure Water City, these 3 devastated villages, I will protect them with my heart. I will use the Long family's blood to pay tribute to the heroic spirits. I believe in you." Shangwan Shiwei smiled faintly. Shortly after, he looked at Shangwan Shiwei in a low voice. His eyes were filled with emotions as he whispered, "Oh right, did your father come back?" Speaking of Shangwan Tianshun, when he left the palace, he told him about the Tian Yao school in the barbaric demon forest. However, he didn't see Shangwan Tianshun, which made Su Yi a little suspicious. "Father." Shangwan Shiwei's expression instantly changed. She grabbed Su Yi's wrist and whispered, "Su Yi, you saw my father?" Suddenly, Su Yi had a bad premonition in his heart. An undetectable panic flashed through his eyes, but he immediately calmed down. "Yes, your father wanted to rush back when he heard the news. At that time, I was busy with the wedding at the Heavenly Palace, so I asked your father to come back later." Chapter 2347. Shangwan Shiwei exhaled. Her beautiful eyes moved as she asked, "Then where's father now?" "He should still be in the Heavenly Palace. Let's go back to the Heavenly Palace to see your father tomorrow. Your father will definitely be happy." Facing Shangwan Shiwei, Su Yi really didn't want to lie. The intense mental battle in his heart made him quickly get up and prepare to go back to the palace tomorrow. Su Yi, he is already married. Looking at Su Yi's back, Shangwan Shiwei suddenly didn't know what to do. A trace of faint sadness appeared on her delicate and pitiful face. It was poignant and moving. The next day, the Tian Yao school students who walked out of the savage demon forest from Songlan City were in a good mood. Xiongzhan and the other youths were wantonly shouting towards the mountains and fields. "We are finally out. Tian Yao school is invincible. Su Yi is invincible. Grandma, the Spirit Ancient Village is finally out." The youths with strong figures were excited. Their eyes were bright and full of spirit, and their auras were extraordinary. For youths like them who have been isolated from the world all year round, how could they not be excited when they were about to go out and see the wonders of the outside world for the first time? "All right, you guys are so unscrupulous just because you came out to take a breather." Shangwan Shiwei's face was stern, and her crescent brows were slightly furrowed. "Woo!" Xiongzhan, Hu Qi, and the rest of the mischievous youths made funny faces at Shangwan Shiwei before charging into the barbarian demon forest like a thunderstorm. Fierce gales surged through the sea of trees, spreading out continuously. "Sai, these guys." Shangwan Shui shook her head and looked helplessly at Hu Bu and the other elders behind her. The latter all raised their heads and laughed loudly. After experiencing several changes, the elders weren't as old-fashioned as before. Looking at the youths of the Spirit Ancient Village who were rarely glowing with vitality, their hearts were filled with boundless joy. "It's not easy to come out, let them go." Behind them, Su Yi slowly walked over. His body was full of vigor, and he carried with him the dignity of a sect master. The elders all turned their heads and bowed in greeting. Shangwan Shui rebuked and said softly, "You're spoiling them. Tian Yao School can't be casually mentioned yet." Instantly, a trace of lightning flashed in front of Su Yi's eyes, and his vital qi instantly spread out to 1,000 miles away. The entire barbaric demon forest suddenly trembled, and a turbulent gale swept through the sky like a storm. "Everyone, come to me." With just a few words, Su Yi's every movement was filled with the aura of a grandmaster. He had a powerful demeanor. The powerhouses of the Tian Yao school, who were shocked by Su Yi's sudden killing intent, also became serious. They all knew that Su Yi must have made a loud announcement. Shangguan Shi Wei's eyes moved slightly. She looked at Su Yi suspiciously and stood beside him obediently, not saying a word. Soon, the youths who had rushed down the mountain rushed back and bowed to Su Yi obediently. "Sectmaster, do you have something to announce?" Elder Shangguan Su's eyes shone brightly. His dry and wrinkled skin trembled slightly because of the surging energy around Su Yi. Looking at the crowd, Su Yi's abyss-like eyes were filled with a domineering aura. He said in a serious tone, "Everyone, the trip to Kanglan City was full of twists and turns, and I forgot about an important thing. Seeing that we are about to walk the world, today I will use this item as a sacrifice to all the heroic spirits here." Tun. Su Yi's green robe fluttered in the wind, and a boundless energy surged out recklessly. The aura of heaven rolled out. Chila, a black ray of light flew out from Su Yi's chest, and a surge of destructive demonic aura filled the air, setting off a violent wave. No one would have thought that Su Yi had such a terrifying demonic beast with him. The imposing aura of destruction made everyone's eyes tremble and their bodies stiffen. They were speechless for a moment. They could only watch as a huge black shadow, the size of a small mountain, sat on the ground, and a pair of thundercloud eyes shone brightly. Compared to it, all the living beings present were insignificant. Soon, hundreds of people prostrated themselves in unison. This kind of aura seemed to be able to crush the space. The faces of the people in front of them instantly became extremely solemn. Tun, who was high up in the air, looked down at the world. She opened her palms, and the aura that spread out fiercely threw a frail figure in front of Su Yi. Bang! Following the parabola, the people then noticed that it was actually an old martial artist with a hideous face and blood dripping from his body. Su Yi kicked him to the side of Shangguan, Su, and the rest. "Sect leader, this is?" Elder Xiong Lu and the rest looked at each other. They did not know what kind of gourds Su Yi was selling. "Do you still remember the vengeance of the spirit ancient village? I've already destroyed the sacred mountain, and the divine tiger sect was also annihilated. 2 of the murderers have been executed, and this is the last one." Su Yi pointed at Hu Qi on the ground and said. As soon as he said that, the eyes of the people trembled. Then boundless anger surged in them. Elder Shangguan Su's face was flushed red, and he glared at Hu Qi. A gust of wind blew Hu Qi's hair up. When he saw Hu Qi's face clearly, he gasped. "That's right. Sect leader, this is one of them." Elder Shangguan Su roared. His eyes were filled with tears, and he was very emotional. Suddenly, everyone stood up and stared angrily at Hu Qi on the ground. The surging murderous intent intensified as the memories surfaced in their minds. On that day, the spirit ancient village was annihilated, and Grandma Shangguan was slaughtered. Hu Qi was the main culprit. Su Yi had always advocated that one should avenge oneself and collect one's own blood debt. Grandma Shangguan Shi Wei's body trembled as she walked slowly toward Hu Qi, looking at the demon-like face. Shangguan Shi Wei was already crying her eyes out. These were tears of hatred, tears that she could not sleep through day and night. For the past 5 years, everyone had cultivated desperately, risking their lives to increase their cultivation, just so that one day they could kill their enemy with their own hands. Almost everyone present had lost their entire family in the hands of a villain like Hu Qi. How could they not hate Hu Qi when they saw him again? Staring at Hu Qi, countless faces became ferocious and resentful. From today onwards, the Tian Yao school will reappear in the world. Today, We will use this person's blood as a sacrifice to the deceased and pave the way for the emperor's eternal glory. Finally, after receiving Su Yi's order, everyone present, from the old to the young, could no longer suppress the hatred in their hearts. Kill! In an instant, hundreds of people roared, pushed their hands forward, and used their weapons. All kinds of energy and light gathered here. Amidst the roars of the crowd, the unconscious Hu Qi finally turned into a pool of blood and scattered into the world. Rumble! A fierce gust of wind cut across the sky. The roars and excitement set off gusts of wind. Everyone was gnashing their teeth in anger, and their blood-red eyes were filled with tears. In an instant, Hu Qi died completely while he was unconscious. Wah! Everyone present hugged their heads and cried at the top of their lungs. They beat their chests and stomped their feet as they knelt on the ground. Chapter 23:48. Grandma, I finally avenged you. Can you see? Shangguan Shi Wei's hands trembled, and her lips trembled as she closed her eyes. My condolences. Sui walked to Shangguan Shi Wei's side with a calm face and patted her shoulder gently. Shangguan Shi Wei opened her misty eyes and looked at Sui. She pursed her lips and hugged Sui tightly again. Sui, thank you. Shangguan Shi Wei sobbed, and the corners of her mouth trembled. He looked at everyone present. Everyone was crying, unable to control themselves. It was as if all the grievances of the past 5 years had finally been vented. It's okay. From now on, Tianyao School will walk the world with dignity. As long as I, Sui, am here, you will be here. His voice was sonorous, and every word was incomparably firm. It was like a huge rock pressing down on everyone's hearts. After a while, the emotions of the people present eased a little. Sui once again saw the long-lost relief and relaxation on their faces. School leader. Hundreds of people knelt on the ground and kowtowed 3 times to Sui. When they looked at Sui again, their eyes were filled with respect and gratitude. Without Sui, if they wanted to take revenge, who knew how many years it would take? We're all on the same side. After today, Tianyao School will reappear in the world. I'll dominate this world. Sui nodded, and his eyes were filled with pride. Tianyao is invincible. The powerhouses of Tianyao School were filled with righteous indignation. Anger accumulated in their chests, and their confidence and fighting spirit reached an unprecedented height for the first time. After the revenge, the people of Tianyao School followed Sui back to Barbarian City and Zhongzhou. Along the way, the hundreds of people were filled with joy. Finally, after a few days of trekking, they finally returned to Yuqian Palace. Before arriving at the mountain gate of Heavenly Command Palace, Sui took a deep breath, the light in his eyes unconsciously trembling. Behind him, the Sky Demon Sex people were amazed. Such a majestic Yuqian Palace was filled with energy and exuded an ancient charm. It gave people the illusion that they had returned to Spirit Ancient Village. However, compared to Spirit Ancient Village, Yuqian Palace was much more imposing. Is this the Heavenly Command Palace? Shangguan Shi Wei opened her mouth and stared at Sui. Slightly startled, Sui's heart instantly thumped, and a bad premonition flashed in his heart. He lied to Shi Wei that Shangguan Tianqian was here. If Shangguan Tianqian wasn't here, then he could only be with Yun Lingfeng, which was the Long family. Tuntin, go in first and find an elder called Guyue. Ask him if Shangguan Tianqian is here. If he isn't, ask him to find a reason. Sui took a deep breath. The people of Tianyao School had just gotten their revenge. Sui didn't want them to be in such a whirlpool of hatred. If he could relax for a few days, then he would relax for a few more days. Okay. Tuntin's voice suddenly lowered, and she turned into a fierce wind and directly went in. Seeing Tuntin disappear from sight, Sui felt relieved and turned around. He casually smiled and said, "Let's go." After passing through Yuqian Chuan and returning to Zhongzhen Vanguard, a pale yellow figure quickly flew over. Her voice was as clear as a bird's chirp, and she softly said, "Sui." Looking at the figure in front of him, Su Yi suddenly smiled and said, Ruo Shi. The two hadn't seen each other for a long time. As soon as they saw each other, they gave each other a big hug. Ruo Shi leaned into Su Yi's arms, her eyes full of love. You've been away for a few months. That's really too long. Su Yi scratched his head. The two of them were newlyweds, and as soon as they met, love and affection welled up in their hearts. Su Yi looked at Lu Ruo Shi, who had just become a married woman, and his starry eyes couldn't help but reveal his deep affection. Yes, I should be by your side every day. It's all my fault. Why do I have to go out and suffer? Did you miss me? Su Yi smiled gently. Suddenly, Lu Ruo Shi greeted him with a fist. Su Yi's glib tongue immediately made her tremble a little. She said coquettishly, Aren't you ashamed to say such things in broad daylight? Ahem. Behind them, Elder Shangwan, Su, and the others were a little embarrassed. They blushed and coughed a few times, then turned their faces away. Standing at the side, Shangwan Shiwei's moon-like eyes quickly became unnatural. Her hands unconsciously made circles, and her pretty face was flushed. Lu Ruo Shi, whose eyes were filled with Su Yi, finally realized that there was a large group of people standing behind her. She immediately blushed and let go of Su Yi's arm. Her face was flushed red. She ruthlessly pinched Su Yi's arm, causing Su Yi to feel pain. Looking at the surprised Su Yi, Lu Ruo Shi's voice became as soft as a mosquito's fly. Stupid Su Yi, you didn't even tell me that there was someone here. Su Yi cried out in grievance and said with a long face, There are so many people here. How can you blame me? At this moment, Shangwan, Su, and the others quickly came forward and greeted Lu Ruo Shi. They said softly, This is the sect leader's wife. Lu Ruo Shi smiled and nodded. Her expression returned to normal. She bowed and said softly, Greetings, everyone. Ruo Shi, these are all old friends from the savage demon forest. From now on, we're all family. Su Yi said with a smile. Hearing this, Lu Ruo Shi smiled and nodded. She looked at Shangwan Shiwei and said softly, Elder sister, I'm Shangwan Shiwei, Su Yi's elder sister for the Tian Yao school. I didn't expect Su Yi to marry such a beautiful woman. Shangwan Shiwei's eyebrows moved slightly. She looked at Su Yi faintly. She had a faint sadness in her heart, but there was a smile on her face. Lu Ruo Shi immediately held Shangwan Shiwei's hand and said with a smile, Elder sister is really beautiful. It's all Su Yi's fault. Why didn't he bring such a good elder sister to the Yutian Palace earlier? After saying that, the two girls glared at Su Yi. Facing the two girls' criticism, Su Yi could only helplessly shake his head and spread his hands. All right, where's Xiao Man? Is she at the back of the mountain? Thinking of Xiao Man, Su Yi's heart suddenly felt warm. Lu Ruo, she shook her head and said softly, Elder sister Xiao Man has been in seclusion with Elder Hong Mo in the Heavenly Pill House these days. Shiran and Ah Chu have also gone in. Elder sister Xiao Man said that no one is allowed to enter, so they haven't come out yet. That's right. The palace master is in seclusion, and no one is allowed to disturb her. Even her husband can't go in and disturb her. A kind laugh came from behind. It was Palace Master Guyue. Palace Master Guyue, Su Yi said with a smile. Looking at the figure that flashed over, his eyes lit up. He nodded and said, Then Xiao Man must have her own ideas. Let's not bother with her. Where's Senior Qing Tian? He's still with the Ice Luan true god in the Heaven Burial Ground. Senior Qing Tian's injuries are too serious. I'm afraid he won't recover so quickly, Elder Guyue said. Then, his gaze swept over the people of the Tian Yao school. Looking at Palace Master Guyue's gaze, Su Yi introduced them to Guyue. His eyes were filled with doubts and expectations. All right, Palace Master Guyue, this is Senior Tian Chen's daughter, Shangwan Shiwei. Is Senior Tian Chen in the palace? Palace Master Guyue narrowed his eyes and looked carefully at Shangwan Shiwei. Then he clapped his hands and said, What a coincidence! Tian Chen went to the Chaos region a few days ago. The Chaos region has just been established. Palace Master and Senior Qing Tian both felt that the Chaos region needed someone to take care of it. Tian Chun is naturally the best candidate. Chapter 2349. Seeing everyone's expressions, Guyue immediately changed the topic. As he spoke, Guyue acted as the host and welcomed everyone into the Zhongzhen Hall. He said softly, "Su Yi, there are other matters at Juqian Palace right now. Palace Master Xiao Man is not here, so there are some things I can only ask you. Come with me." Su Yi understood, and his expression immediately changed. He glanced at Lu Ruoxi and Shangwan Shiwei, and specifically asked Lu Ruoxi to take good care of Shangwan Shiwei and the others. Then, he followed Guyue into the inner room. In the inner room, Tuntin transformed into Little Stone. As soon as she saw Su Yi, she burrowed into Su Yi's arms. Tianchen really didn't come back. Su Yi's expression immediately darkened as he asked in a low voice. Guyue glanced at Tuntin, who was in the 9th stage of the Fiend Realm stage. A trace of surprise flashed through the depths of his eyes. He immediately replied, "Didn't he go to find an old friend from Tian Yao's school? What the hell happened?" The two sat down. Su Yi told Guyue about Yun Lingfeng sweeping through Songlan City. Immediately, Guyue's dignified eyebrows gradually furrowed. If that's the case, then the Long family will definitely use Tian Yao School to make an issue out of capturing Shangwan Tianchen. But why hasn't there been any news yet? Hearing this, Su Yi's eyes flashed with a trace of coldness. Guyue was right. Since the Long family had seized such a good opportunity, why would they still allow him to bring Tian Yao School's people out of the mountain? At that time, Qi Nu had covered Shangwan Shiwei to enter the altar's secret passage. How could Yun Lingfeng, who was already so powerful, not discover it, deliberately leaving clues for him? I don't know what the Long family is planning. Su Yi said coldly, and a killing intent spontaneously arose. Guyue patted Su Yi's shoulder and said softly, "Don't panic. You've unified the Chaos Realm, wreaked havoc in the Endless Sky Sea City, and even went to the Thunderfire Temple, but the Long family didn't do anything. We should think of a foolproof plan now. Even if we have to fight, we have to be prepared." Su Yi hurriedly nodded his head and hurriedly asked about Guyue's soul ancestor training in the Heavenly Palace. In the next few days, Su Yi tried his best to conceal the matter regarding Shangwan Tianchen from Shangwan Shiwei. During this time, Qi Nu also finally woke up. The two brothers hugged each other and cried. After being separated for so many years, they finally met again. Unfortunately, things had already changed. "Su Yi, I'll follow you from now on. Kanglan City was no more. I want to become as strong as you and revive Kanglan City. This is my life's dream." In the room, Qi Nu's eyes were wide open. In terms of cultivation, Qi Nu relied on the spirit liquid that he gave to Akatsuki back then to rapidly improve. He had basically reached the 9th level of the Origin Void stage and was only a step away from the Origin Monarch stage. After that, Su Yi gathered all the people from the Tian Yao School and personally gave them pointers on martial Dao. The content of the lecture started from the most basic. After accumulating so much battle experience, Su Yi had a deeper understanding of the heavenly demon ancient scripture. When the people from the Tian Yao School heard that Su Yi was going to personally give a lecture, they were extremely excited. In the Heavenly Palace, many disciples of the Heavenly Palace heard that Su Yi was going to give a lecture on martial Dao. In an instant, the huge Central Earthquake Plaza was packed with people. It was so crowded that not even a drop of water could trickle through. It was a grand scene. Even Jun Haoyin and the others, who were rarely seen, came with a learning attitude when they heard about it. In the plaza, Su Yi sat high up. A group of elders, as well as some vassal elders from the palace, listened to Su Yi's lecture with interest. At first, they didn't think much of it. They thought that although Su Yi's martial Dao cultivation was extremely high, he was still young. Most of the palace's experts came with the mentality of joining in on the fun. After listening for 2 days, the smiles on every elder's face gradually disappeared. It could be said that it was directly replaced by shock. The depth of Su Yi's teachings was far beyond everyone's imagination. It could even be said that some martial Dao secrets were impossible to be understood in such detail, even by origin domain experts. From the first day, Su Yi started from the origin energy attribute. On the second day, he started from heaven and earth energy. On the third day, Su Yi directly started to evaluate everyone's cultivation methods and martial skills. He also combined them with the Dragon Ancestors medicine scripture to give the most suitable suggestions based on each person's physique characteristics. In just a few days, many disciples' martial Dao cultivation had an obvious and rapid improvement. Many people's martial Dao shackles were suddenly enlightened, and even their physiques improved by leaps and bounds. I feel that all my meridians are open. It's amazing. Me too. Usually, when I use soul skills, there's always some sluggishness. Today, all my meridians are open. So that's how it is. The demon spirit insight has such a magical effect. The people of Tian Yao School and Juqian Palace looked at their own magical changes and were excited, exclaiming again and again. When they looked at Su Yi again, their eyes were filled with respect and worship. Thank you, Palace Master Su. Palace Master Su, please accept this disciple's gratitude for teaching us. Thank you, Sect Master, for teaching us. Xiongzhan will definitely study hard and win glory for Tian Yao School. In front of the plaza, a tsunami of people swept back and forth. Su Yi's fame was even more deeply ingrained in everyone's hearts, learning at sunrise and resting at sunset. Su Yi's teaching cycle went on for a whole week. The 100 or so people of Tian Yao School had a visible change. All kinds of outstanding talents like Xiongzhan and Hu Qi even showed signs of breaking through to the Origin Emperor realm. The elders who were listening were shocked, and each of them showed an expression of admiration. Su Yi said a lot of martial Dao insights, even had a lot of areas that they didn't understand. What they didn't know was that the heavenly demon ancient scripture and the origin supreme technique were the accumulation of countless years of wisdom from the predecessors. With the accumulation of the predecessors and the enemies that Su Yi faced were the strongest existences in the Sky Barbarians, Su Yi's understanding of martial Dao, and even the control of soul power, had long surpassed everyone present. On this day, the moon was high in the sky, and the night wind was cold. Su Yi, who had finished teaching again, sat alone at the front peak of Zhongzhen Peak. He had been teaching the people of Tian Yao School during the day for two reasons. First, to make up for the negligence of these years. Second, to give Palace Master Gyue and the others time to gather the forces of the Chaos region, the demon subduing sect, and the Heavenly Palace. According to Su Yi's plan, the experts of the Bawang sect and the Chaos region's Golden Dragon Mystery Realm would have finished their cultivation. The real battle would begin at any moment. After everyone was gathered, Su Yi immediately went to inform the Yun family, the Thunderfire Temple, and the Sacred Mountain to attack the Long family together. As time passed, Su Yi became more and more anxious. The Long family didn't need to worry about Shangwan Tianshun, but the demonic energy in Qi Nu's body couldn't be delayed any longer. He couldn't just watch Qi Nu's life force weaken. Chapter 2350. Patting off the dust and looking up at the stars, Su Yi muttered in his heart, "Uncle Hong, take advantage of this last bit of time. Tomorrow, I will ask someone to make a pill to restore the physical body. You should also leave me and regain your freedom." Freedom? What freedom do I want? Brat, say that again. Hearing Su Yi's words, Qi Fei Hong was a little excited at first, but then he looked at Su Yi with some resentment. Su Yi raised his head and leaned against the white jade ground in front of the epicenter peak, changing into a comfortable position. In his eyes, there was a brilliant river of stars, but there was a touch of indifference in his eyes. The battle with the Long family will definitely be earth-shattering. You have already died once before, and I don't want you to go through it with me again. Su Yi took a deep breath, and his eyes seemed to be dim. Step by step, Su Yi had long been accustomed to danger, but Su Yi really didn't want the people around him to be in any danger. Chi Fei Hong was already so old, and he had been waiting for rebirth for dozens of years. Su Yi didn't want him to be in danger. The iron soulfish was already like this, and Chi Fei Hong was going to follow in his footsteps. Your grandmother's fart. Chi Fei Hong suddenly shouted in the primeval chaos ancient bell, and his withered hands slapped the bell with force. The furious Chi Fei Hong roared loudly, as if he wanted to break free from the primeval chaos ancient bell. Su Yi's mind moved, and the ancient bell flashed, and a white stream of light flew out from his mind. Chi Fei Hong's body was hazy, and his eyes were fierce, as if he was really angry. He said, "Brat, I, Chi Fei Hong, am timid, but after following you for so long, I have never screwed up the chain." After saying that, Chi Fei Hong pointed his right hand at Su Yi, as if he wanted to eat Su Yi, and roared loudly. "The battle hasn't started yet, and you want me to escape first? Why don't you ask Qin Xue if she's willing?" After a while, a purple demonic light began to stir within the Tian Yuan demonic soul. The intense light outlined a beautiful figure of the opposite sex. "Su, the Uncle Hong is right. I've been by your side for so many years. We've enjoyed blessings together. Are we going to run away when there's trouble?" Ling Qinxue was sitting leisurely in the heavenly origin demon soul in her soul form. Immediately, Su Yi sat up, facing these two comrades of many years, especially Ling Qinxue, who was the woman who understood him the most. He was speechless. "I just don't miss you guys. There's already a problem with old Tai. You." At the same time, Chi Fei Hong and Ling Qinxue made a gesture of shutting up at the same time and said angrily, "All right, then I'm not going to come out either. If we're going to die, we'll die together. Let's live together." Hearing that, Su Yi shook his head and looked at the two of them with a forced smile. After a while, Chi Fei Hong sat next to Su Yi. The two of them looked into the distance together. "Qinxue, you've completely refined the 9 spiritual lynx's blood essence." Su Yi's eyes flashed with surprise. In the Tian Yuan demonic soul, Ling Qinxue's body gradually solidified. Her beautiful face had 2 amber eyes that were shining. She said softly, "I've already refined it when you were in Tianlan City. However, I'm still in my soul form. I can't tell how much my cultivation base has improved. I'll only know when my body recovers." Su Yi nodded and promised that he would get someone to refine the pills for the two of them the next day. Thinking that he could see Ling Qinxue again after so many years, Su Yi could not help but smirk. "Are you happy?" Ling Qinxue asked softly. "Of course. Have you forgotten what we've been through together?" Su Yi's mind began to recall the scene when he was in the wild demon forest and the thrilling memory of the lynx tribe. Ling Qinxue glanced at him. Her willowy eyebrows outlined a unique, wild beauty. Her seductive lips moved slowly as she said, "I don't think so. Lu Ruoxi, Duanmu Xiaoman, Shangguan Shui, Duvi Yuma, and Jihan Noa. I think you're too happy to think about home." Seeing that Ling Qinxue was able to chat with him so freely again, Su Yi was full of joy even though there was jealousy in her tone. No matter who was by his side, Ling Qinxue's position could never be erased. "Can you tell me who the other one is?" Su Yi's lips curled into a smile. Again. Ling Qinxue's moon pearl moved up as she tapped her chin lightly to recall. However, she was interrupted by Su. "You again. Tell me, what did you say?" Ling Qinxue blushed as if she had heard wrongly. Her voice instantly became softer. Su Yi looked at Ling Qinxue, who was like a fairy among demons in the heavenly origin demon soul. Her wheat-colored skin revealed a hint of untamable beauty as he whispered, "Qinxue, no matter who is by my side, there's always a place for you. When I was at my weakest, you were by my side. When I was about to die, you were also the one who woke me up again and again in my mind. I remember all the good you did for me. Don't you know how I feel? But you're already married. You have 2 wives." Ling Qinxue's eyes were filled with loneliness after she said this. It was as if her beloved toy had been snatched away. She could only watch helplessly. She couldn't be angry at all. "Ruoxi is my childhood sweetheart. Xiaoman is even more so my confidant. If you understand my feelings, I believe you too can be very good. Su-yi said. Ling Qinxue rolled her eyes. Her eyes flashed with the domineering aura of a demon aristocrat. She said coquettishly, "You already know? You've made it sound so dignified for being half-hearted. Shameless bastard." Sui laughed and turned to look at Qi Feihong. The latter was already snoring. Qi Feihong and Su-yi looked at each other and smiled. Their narrowed eyes were filled with slyness. Look, Uncle Hong can't listen anymore. He fell asleep. Ling Qinxue was angry and amused at the same time. Qinxue, trust me. Su-yi looked at Ling Qinxue and said softly. After going through all kinds of difficulties and dangers, Su-yi finally knew what he wanted. In this foreign world where the strong preyed on the weak, one had to work hard to fight for what one wanted. One had to be braver if one liked something. Ling Qinxue said faintly, but I don't want our child to be a half-beast in the future. Brother Yin Lin is an example. How much hardship would he have to suffer? Sigh. Su-yi immediately rested his chin on his hand and began to ponder. Have you also thought of this? Ling Qinxue frowned and said with some melancholy. Su-yi shook his head and looked at Ling Qinxue. His eyes were filled with light as he said softly, No, I just thought that after I confessed, you would think of your future generation. Qinxue, you're still the best. Ling Qinshue's face immediately turned red. She tilted her head and scolded, Shameless. Smiling at Ling Qinxue, Su-yi's mood became much better. In this world, Su-yi had more and more people he cared about. In Su-yi's heart, Su-yi had even more reasons to protect. Su-yi actually had some faint expectations for the future battle. Long family come, Su-yi muttered. Chapter 23:51. There were stars in the distance, as if the flames of war would spread across the sky in the future. After looking for a while, Su-yi got up and returned to the room. You're back. Lu Ruashi saw Su-yi coming back and hugged Su-yi like a little bird. She looked up at her husband, her eyes full of love. Su-yi obediently scratched Lu Ruashi's nose and said softly, You're still waiting for me so late? Lu Ruashi pouted and snorted. Then she sat on the edge of the bed and supported herself with both hands. She said in a serious voice, You've been away for a few months. Big Sister Xiaoman and I have been waiting for a long time. Now that you're finally back, I still have to rest early. How can I still be like this? Lu Ruashi's face was slightly red and she lowered her head. Our father-in-law and grandfather used to living here. Su-yi also sat on the edge of the bed and looked at Lu Ruashi. The closer they got, the heavier Lu Ruashi's breath became. She said in a serious voice, and very used to it, You've worked hard teaching these days. Let's go see them tomorrow. Okay, I'll do as you say. Su-yi put down the bed curtain, and the candlelight in the room was instantly extinguished. In the darkness, a soft voice came. It was Ling Qinshue's voice. She said softly, Shameless, lower your voice. As he spoke, Su-yi set up an energy restriction in his mind. In the spirit sea, Qi Feihong's snoring gradually sounded again. Everything disappeared in silence. The next day, the sky was bright. Su-yi and Lu Ruashi, who woke up early, walked out of the room together. After Lu Ruashi helped Su-yi freshen up, the two strolled around Jutian Palace like an ordinary husband and wife. After greeting his grandfather and father-in-law at the epicenter peak, Su-yi found Jun Haoyan and gave him the serene flame flower, moon devour Bodhi voodoo, and glass sky xiang pistol that he collected with great difficulty. After a week of guidance to the disciples of Heavenly Command Palace, Su-yi's own cultivation also showed signs of improvement. Taking advantage of this period of rest, Su-yi summoned Tunten. The huge black stone figure quickly attracted the attention of everyone at Zhongzhen Peak. Today, the Overlord Soul Sect, Yutian Palace, and Tian Yao School will each send out 300 people. You can follow me into the stomach of the desolate, devouring heaven beast. I will bring you to visit the ruins and cultivate inside. However, as for which 300 people, You'll have to fight for the quota yourselves." As soon as Su Yi's voice fell, everyone's eyes were filled with excitement, and the sound of discussion resounded through the heavens and earth. Standing beside him, Eldegue also had a look of admiration in his eyes. After Tuntin transformed into her true form, her terrifyingly huge figure left these experienced elders flabbergasted. If Su Yi manages the sect wholeheartedly, what business does the Long family have? Luo Wuya sighed. These days, the vassals and elders who had rushed over after hearing the news were lined up neatly on top of the pavilion. When they heard that Su Yi was teaching at Yutian Palace, the various branches of Yutian Palace also brought their outstanding disciples over. Su Yi's deeds in the Taichin continent and Shunhu continent had already spread throughout Yutian Palace. When everyone saw the mountain-like Tuntin, there was only endless reverence and admiration in their eyes. Luo Wuya nodded again. Su Yi is waiting for the spirit medicine to restore his body. We'll leave this to him. We'll refine it for him. Dan Honggong smiled. When he saw Su Yi again, his original resentment had already turned into endless admiration. Even an old fool like Dan Honggong could change like this. The elders couldn't help but be shocked. Let's begin. High up in the sky, Su Yi waved his long sleeves and flew up to sit on Tuntin's palm. In an instant, several thousand fierce strands of soul energy flew through the sky. Su Yi narrowed his eyes and nodded from time to time. His time at Yutian Palace could end at any moment. Su Yi only hoped that in this limited time, he could raise the overall strength of Yutian Palace. Tuntin, you won't blame me for using the Tianfeng ruins like this, right? Su Yi smiled. Tuntin's divine eyes flashed with a profound light. It softly said, "Master, Tuntin's everything is yours." With that, Su Yi smiled and nodded. He gestured to Palace Lord Gyue, and the two of them nodded in the air before continuing to watch the selection. One day for the selection, one day for entering the Tianfeng ruins to cultivate, and so on. Except for the first time, when Su Yi brought 900 people in, Tuntin had been the one to take care of the remaining 900 people. When Su Yi brought 900 people into the Tianfeng ruins for the first time, the divine clouds intertwined, and the mystical energy of heaven and earth was several times denser than in Yutian Palace. Here, the 900 people could train and improve greatly. You can look at all the martial techniques here, but you can't take them away. When the time comes, the desolate devouring heaven beast will take you away. Whether you have the ability to enter again will depend on your own abilities. Yes. Thank you, Sect Master Su. Looking at the departing figure, the eyes of many young soul reapers who were still practicing martial techniques fluctuated. The towering figure of fire sucked in a breath of cold air, and his soul trembled with excitement. On the shore of the ruins, a huge team of 900 people occupied this small part of the ruins. Who would have thought that after 10,000 years, this place where the martial way was born would once again welcome life and vitality? Leaving the crowd behind, Su Yi ran all the way and quickly went around the ruins again. Only half of the Tianfeng ruins was left, and it wasn't very big. After returning to the myriad insect forest, without the glazed heavenly stamen, this place transformed into a deep and gloomy forest again. During this time, the mountain wind blew, and Su Yi couldn't help but calm down and look at the changes in heaven and earth. Clang! Taking out the blood demon killing god sword, the demonic red lines along with the sword edge cleansed the heaven and earth. Wherever the sword edge pointed, the sky cracked. A sonorous sound of metal resounded through heaven and earth. Su Yi gradually closed his eyes and gently communicated with the sword spirit. Pinger! Su Yi called out to the little fellow in the sword. Pinger isn't here. Master, are you going to stir shit again? The sword vibrated, and a charming and enchanting voice with absolute disdain was heard. Su Yi was enlightened. Ping-er, who was transformed from the blood spiritual fruit, had two forms. Su Yi, who hadn't used a sword for a long time, suddenly wanted to cultivate his sword intent. At this moment, The one in the sword should be the red-clothed Ping. It's you, the red-clothed Ping. He laughed foolishly. Could it be that Ping was angry with Wumashio and didn't come out? Where's little Ping? He looked at the sword hilt and said, on the huge blood-red sword, the red-clothed Ping. Er's pretty face turned a little disdainful. She said softly, nothing. Little Ping. Is resting during this period. If there's anything, Master can tell me. But don't mess with those smelly things again. Chapter 2352. As the soul of a sword spirit's spiritual sense was even more extraordinary. She must have been traumatized by what happened last time. He immediately smiled and said, Good. When I'm free, I'll find some delicious food to make it up to you. Practice sword intent with me today. Yes, Master. Ping. Heaved a sigh of relief, and her entire sword became sharp. Suyi's cultivation had just reached the origin ancestor realm. During his time in the Heavenly Palace, he would consolidate his cultivation whenever he had time. Even at the Yuan domain stage, it was extremely disadvantageous for one to make a breakthrough too quickly. Therefore, He thought of picking up sword intent in the Gu Demon Forest. Sword intent was driven by the soul. Now that he had the soul energy of a beginner grade 5, he wanted to spend some more effort. According to the sword intent training with Duanmu Qingtian, He understood that sword intent moves were the same as martial arts techniques. They were divided into mortal grade, good grade, general grade, martial grade, king grade, royal grade, and heaven grade. Within each grade, there were 3 levels: beginner, intermediate, and advanced. The heavenly wind sword intent belonged to the intermediate heaven grade sword intent move. In the endless star domain, the intermediate star domain of the Sword King Divine region had a unique set of rules for the use of heaven grade sword intent. They were divided into penetration, mystery, perfection, sublime, and transformative. Each level was further divided into beginner, intermediate, and advanced. According to Duanmu Qingtian, everyone in the Sword King Divine region was a soul controller with a strong sword intent. In other words, a sword intent cultivator was definitely an extremely powerful soul controller, but a soul controller might not necessarily be a sword intent cultivator who had attained the Great Tao. After a period of hard cultivation in the Three Ravens region, although he could familiarize himself with the heavy sword, communicate with the sword spirit, and cultivate sword intent, he could only unleash the killing god's sword power with the blood demon killing god's own power. In terms of cultivation of the heavenly wind sword intent, he still had not made any progress. If he could comprehend the heavenly wind sword intent before the war and reach the beginner stage of penetration, it would at least be of immeasurable help to the Long family. Pinger, be careful. He sat cross-legged on the ground. Blood marks spread out, and a sharp sword might swept across the sky. He poured energy into the sword and immediately shouted, and his figure quickly rose into the sky. According to the previous process of cultivating sword intent, one could either comprehend the mysteries of the sword in silence or become one with the sword. Man and sword as one, continuously communicate with the heavy sword, sword spirit, heavenly wind sword intent, general principles. He muttered in his heart, and a huge amount of information rapidly shot out from his mind. His silhouette continued to sway in the forest as he used his spiritual sense to spy on the surroundings. Immediately, a domineering aura surged forth, ferocious beyond compare. Bang, bang, bang. As his voice fell, the erupting blood sword flashed across the sky and earth. The huge sword light beam was like a heavenly pillar that bombarded the heavens and earth. Wherever it passed, the space along the way would suddenly explode. Boom! In the Gu Demon Forest, a vast and mighty aura rolled over. The forest within a few thousand meters collapsed to the ground in an instant. Very soon, the forest that had spread out bounced back without any change. Clang! Erecting the heavy sword on the ground, Su Yi's gaze became more dignified. The vast aura of energy fluctuated like an ocean, and very soon, it dissipated again. No, the heaven-grade heavenly wind sword intent is really difficult to cultivate. Su Yi breathed heavily. Chi Fei Hong saw that the heavenly origin demonic soul in Su Yi's body was shining, and his soul energy was quickly dissipating. He immediately said, Suruga has been cultivating for many years. Sword intent is not something that can be rushed. Su Yi nodded. Duanmu Qingtian once said that the Million Sword Mountain was a good place to comprehend sword intent. Let's practice more. Su Yi immediately closed his eyes. When he opened his eyes, a fierce and domineering aura surged again, and immediately a sonic boom resounded through the sky again. Boom, boom, boom. In the Gu Demon Forest, the wind and clouds were surging, and the fierce and domineering aura was constantly erupting. The vast aura of heaven spread and suppressed the youths in the heavenly wind ruins. Their hearts were trembling, and they were unable to resist. Too powerful. Sectmaster Su is only 20 years old. Sai, the man that our palace master likes, is so valiant. I also want to be like him. Is this the demeanor of the #1 sky barbarian? Far away, on the shore of the ruins, 900 shocked gazes were cast towards the Gu Demon Forest. The aura was grand, and those with low cultivation level turned pale immediately. At the same time, before the epicenter of the earthquake, round after round of competition was still going on. Outside the Yutian Palace, there were two groups of people who were advancing towards the palace. There were about 3 to 5 people in each group, and the leader was a young man with a decisive demeanor. He was only 16 or 17 years old, and his cultivation level had already reached the 6th level of the Origin Emperor realm. Walking at the front, there was a shocking elegance in his bones. He was definitely the cream of the crop. Slow down. We on. Behind him, there was a flash of blue light in her eyes. It was Dugu Yuma. Upon hearing that, Situ Muyong walked even faster. He said to Dugu Yuma, Sister, hurry up. Grandfather finally allowed us to look for junior martial uncle. I'm so anxious. After that, Situ Muyong's wind attribute origin chi became even more majestic. The turbulent energy surged up to the sky, and the space instantly distorted like a gust of wind blowing into the distance. You rascal! Dugyumal followed behind and shouted. Immediately, she quickened her pace and rushed towards the Yutian Palace. On the other side, a slender and proud figure cut across the sky. The vast energy fluctuation spread out like a raging wave, and the sword aura was extremely sharp. The man who entered the palace was an older man, but he had sharp eyebrows and tiger-like eyes. He had an extraordinary appearance. In particular, the vast sword aura around him gave off a mighty and domineering aura that swept across the world. Even though his hair was white, his tall nose bridge was like a sword hilt, and he was very handsome. His demeanor was resolute, and his appearance was like jade. Although he didn't say much, one could tell from his jade-like face that he was extraordinarily handsome when he was young. The two parties competed in speed, but in the end, the one who arrived first was still the man. The people of the Yutian Palace seemed to be very familiar with the man, and they let him pass. When he arrived at the front peak of Zhongjin Peak, the sound of energy rushing to the sky quickly attracted the man's attention. He squinted his eyes and stopped to watch. Elder Gyue and the other elders came quickly. When they saw the man, they laughed softly and said, Brother Kwanga, did you smell Su Yi's scent? Or did someone inform you? It turned out to be Su Kwanga. Previously, Su Yi gave the channel opening vine and other materials to Duanmu Xiaoman to cultivate the Jade Springbone refining pill and asked Elder Hong, M.O., to help him cultivate. Now, Suruga, who had just recovered his strength and face, came to the Yutian Palace to thank him in person. Oh, Ear is back. Suruga's sword-like eyebrows were raised, and he looked indescribably majestic. Gyue nodded and pointed in the direction of Tun Tun and said, It's been more than 10 days, and he only came out once. He said that he was cultivating sword essence. This kid is too powerful, and we can't control him. Sword essence. Suruga's eyes lit up, and he was overjoyed. Chapter 23:53. To Suruga, who loved swords as much as her life, Sue was always thinking about the cultivation of sword will, so she was naturally very happy. Can I go in and take a look? Suruga's eyes flickered. Immediately, Gue waved his hand and said to the black mountain-like Tuntin, Su Yi's master is here. Let him in. The desolate devouring beast was at the 9th level of the demonic domain. It could do whatever it wanted in Juchin Palace. Even Palace Master Guyue had to give it some face. Sitting cross-legged on the ground, Tuntin slowly opened her thundercloud eyes and suddenly said, Master's master? Then it must be master. Nodding slightly at Suruga, the desolate devouring beast's divine light rippled. A thunderous shock wave instantly enveloped Suruga. The space rippled rapidly, and the handsome figure quickly disappeared from the central peak. Watching Suruga leave, Palace Master Gue narrowed his eyes and smiled. He said softly, Master and disciple meet. Su Yi's sword should be able to improve further, right? Boom! As soon as he finished speaking, 2 streaks of light flew towards Guyue. Guyue turned around and saw that they were the disciples hiding in the mountains near Juchin Palace. Why are you back? Guyue said faintly. One of the disciples whispered a few words in Guyue's ear. Instantly, Palace Master Guyue's benevolent eyebrows turned solemn. His wrinkled hand gently stroked his beard as he said in a low voice, I know, you can leave now. Try to buy some time. But from the looks of it, they seem to have a very high status in the sect. Judging from their words, they seem to be very familiar with Master Su. Do we really have to make things difficult for them? The other disciple, whose ears were unusually big, asked respectfully. Guyue flicked his long sleeves, his eyes full of elegance, and said coldly, Delay. Yes. The 2 disciples accepted the order and once again transformed into a wind-like phantom and escaped into the mountains and rivers. Behind him, the sound of something breaking through the air grew fainter and fainter. Guyue raised his foot and walked towards the pavilion where the elders were gathered, muttering softly, The 10,000 Swords Alliance has always been wishful thinking. I'm afraid it's not a good thing for them to come to my imperial palace at a time like this. Let's discuss it with Pasan and Wu Ya. In Gu Demon Forest, the powerful pressure was still unable to disperse the entire forest. The terrifying sword intent accompanied by the boundless sword waves swept into the sky, exploding with a series of fierce sounds. When the sounds surged over like waves, a new batch of 900 disciples on the shore of the ruins stared at the mysterious energy in the distant sky. Their hearts were filled with amazement and amazement. It wasn't easy for them to enter the Heaven Wind ruins, and the 900 disciples had to cultivate and shock every day. What kind of cultivation technique is Sect Master Su practicing? I heard that it's been more than 10 days. No matter how strong his cultivation is, he can't withstand such torment every day. Sigh. Sect Master Su is really going all out. The scariest thing is that people who are more talented than you are even more hard-working than you. Looking at the sea and sighing, the 900 disciples sighed and sat down cross-legged while facing the sea, preparing to start cultivating. Boom! At this moment, a huge sword light clearly appeared in front of everyone's eyes. It was surrounded by a fierce light, and everyone was stunned. In the sword light, Suruga had his hands behind his back. Faint electric arcs overflowed from his eyes. In his eyes, the biting cold light was like a cold sword lying across his heart. One look was enough to make one's heart tremble. Everyone was dumbfounded as they looked at the sword light that broke through the sky and remained silent for a long time. Did you see it clearly? A disciple asked. At this moment, everyone reacted and looked at the sky. The remaining power of the sword light was gone. An endless divine light was spreading and collapsing between heaven and earth. It was frightening. This is the demeanor of an absolute powerhouse. Let's hurry up and cultivate, a disciple shouted. Everyone calmed down again and sat down, forming hand seals and starting to cultivate. In the barbaric demon forest, Su-Yi was sweating profusely and his face was pale. He stabbed his heavy sword into the ground, and his footsteps also became weak. Damn it, Su-Yi, can't learn any martial technique with just a little bit, but I'm stumped by the heavenly wind sword intent, Su-Yi said with a frown as he stared at the ground in a daze. In his body, Qi Feihong's voice also sounded, "It won't be that fast." Although the heavenly wind sword intent is heaven-grade middle tier, I think it doesn't belong to the Tian barbarian continent. If you really cultivate it, you won't be able to achieve anything without 3 to 5 years. 3 to 5 years? How can it take so long? Su-Yi also knew that Qi Feihong's words made sense, but he didn't allow himself to cultivate slowly. His cultivation was already rising fast enough. If he wanted to defeat Draconis, he had to find another way. Shangguan Tianqin was now in the hands of a Long family, and he really didn't have time. Be careful. When Su-Yi and Qi Feihong were arguing, the aura above the barbaric demon forest suddenly exploded. Sword Qi swept across the sky, and a white light shone brightly. A sword light shot out, wrapped in the energy of heaven and earth, as if it was splitting the sky and earth, and suddenly came in the direction of Su-Yi. Immediately, Su-Yi quickly raised his head, and a divine light surged in his eyes. In the white light, he saw a slender figure with an extraordinary aura, but his face was hard to detect. Good. I was just worried that I didn't have an opponent. Su-Yi's gaze drifted, and the corner of his mouth curled up. He waved the blood demon killing god sword, and under the activation of the Origin Supreme technique, a blood-red light spread out and directly collided with the sword intent that cut the void. Pinger, the power of the killing god sword. Su-Yi roared. As the blood demon killing god sword swung back, the sword flew into the air, and the red and white light instantly collided in the air. Boom! The two collided in the sky above the barbaric demon forest and directly dissipated. Heaven and earth trembled, and countless space ripples quickly dissipated. Following the sound of the explosion, Su-Yi retreated rapidly. The distance of more than 1,000 meters made Su-Yi's eyes fill with shock, and a sweet taste of blood immediately appeared in his chest. Standing in the sky above the barbaric demon forest, Suruga's lips curled up, and his handsome face was filled with satisfaction. You can actually have such a fierce attack at the Origin Ancestor realm. Very good. Recognizing the person who had come, Su-Yi was immediately overjoyed. He jumped on the tip of the sword, looked at Suruga across the sky, and said, "Master." Suruga nodded and sized up Su-Yi from top to bottom. The current Su-Yi had been completely reborn, and it had only been a few months, but it had already completely shocked Suruga. On the other side, Su-Yi looked at Suruga, who had recovered his appearance. Not only was he handsome, but his cultivation had also directly charged to the 7th level of the Origin Domain realm. Such a ferocious rise made people gasp in amazement. After saying that, the two of them slowly landed and hugged each other excitedly. Suruga patted Su-Yi's shoulder heavily, and the corner of his mouth could not help but twitch. Chapter 2354. Good boy. Master saved your life, and you have returned Master's life. Having a disciple like you is the happiest thing in Master's life. Suruga's eyes were filled with tears, and his elegant eyes were instantly moist. Master's lifelong knot, disciple engraved it in his heart, and will never forget it. Master is doing this to save Master. Disciple will do his best. Su-Yi nodded. The latter was even more excited and nodded repeatedly. I heard from Palace Master Guyue that you are practicing the heavenly wind sword intent. Suruga said happily. Looking at Suruga, Su-Yi immediately nodded his head desolately. It was the first time in his life that he had suffered a setback in his martial arts cultivation. He said shamefully, "Sword intent is mysterious and profound. Disciple is stupid. I have been practicing for more than half a month, and there is no progress at all. I am really ashamed. With a long sigh, Suruga patted Su Yi's shoulder heavily. Don't be too modest. Sword intent is the most difficult to cultivate. If an ordinary person can use sword intent, they are already invincible in the world. What you're practicing is the most difficult heavenly wind sword intent. If it was so easy to cultivate, why would I need to leave a clone in the 21 palaces with the help of the flowing image stone to find the inheritance? Listening to Master Suruga's words, Su Yi's mood eased a little, and he said in a low voice, "That's right. Master's words reminded me. Haste makes waste. The sword moves at will. The sword comes from the heart. I still have to practice slowly." Yes, with this mentality, it is only a matter of time before you succeed in cultivating the heavenly wind sword intent. Show me what you have comprehended recently, and let me see, Suruga said faintly. Suddenly, Su Yi's heart was moved, and a huge traction force shot out from his hand, and the blood demon killing god sword set off a gust of wind and fell into his hand. Glancing at Suruga, Su Yi's eyes flashed with coldness. Rumble. The sword waves spread out, and the silver light shook the sky. In midair, the dense red sword light blossomed like fireworks. Layer after layer of sword shadows permeated the void. Everywhere one looked, there were layers upon layers of sword shadows. Soon, the sword light fell, and the countless halos around Suruga's body exploded. The space trembled, and tornadoes were stirred up. Something's not right. Why do I feel like something's missing? Suruga straightened her back. His handsome eyes caught Su Yi's every move and thought, without missing a single detail. Seeing Su Yi shuttling back and forth in the air, Suruga frowned even more. In front of Gonke Lake, Sitamuyang placed his hands on his hips. Facing the disciples blocking his way, his eyebrows quickly sank. I said, "I'm here to look for my little martial granduncle. Are you going to stop me?" Sitamuyang said coldly. The guarding disciple swallowed a mouthful of saliva, and his gaze instantly hardened. He stared at Sitamuyang and Dugayuma and said in a low voice, "Are you kidding me? You should go back to your own place to look for him. Why are you looking for him in my Yuchin palace? Go back." Faced with the guarding disciple's gesture, Sitamuyang glared at him and said angrily, "The whole world knows that my little martial granduncle is Su Yi. Are you trying to make things difficult for me? I've said that Sectmaster Su is not in the Yuchin palace. Don't you understand?" The guarding disciple suddenly became angry and shouted loudly. Suddenly, Dugayuma's blue eyes flashed. He quickly put down Sitamuyang's raised hand, took out the token, and said softly, "Little brother, as you can see, we're from the Myriad Sword Alliance. Even if Su Yi is not here, we can still pay a visit to Palace Master Xiaoman, right?" The guarding disciple looked at each other, frowned, and walked to the side to discuss. Seizing the opportunity, Sitamuyang pulled Dugayuma aside and said, "Grandfather said that Su Yi is back. It can't be wrong. Sister, these people are trying to make things difficult for us by not letting us see little martial granduncle." Dugayuma smiled and said softly, "Let's play it by ear later." At this moment, the two guarding disciples had finished discussing. They looked at Dugayuma's eyes that seemed to have seen through everything in the world and said bravely, "The people from the Myriad Sword Alliance are not allowed to enter. You should go back." *T. It's fine if you want to make things difficult for me. Why? Are you trying to make things difficult for the Myriad Sword Alliance? Sitamuyang frowned when he heard that. An intense chilliness flashed across his eyes. His tyrannical strength of the 6th level of the Origin Emperor realm spread out rapidly, causing the disciple's face to turn pale all of a sudden. "You!" the guarding disciple exclaimed. A young man of 17 or 18 years old was able to unleash such a powerful aura. The mighty wind attribute energy quickly pushed the guarding disciple away and turned into two strong gusts of wind that blew far away. "Muyang!" Dugayuma spat. She was helpless against Situ's recklessness. Sitamuyang sniffled and said to Dugayuma, "It's all right. Little Marshal Granduncle won't blame us if he knows about it. Let's go." Let's go in and have a look. I don't believe that Yutian Palace dares to offend the Myriad Sword Alliance. As soon as he finished his words, 4 or 5 strong gusts of wind surged into the sky. Suddenly, the gusts of wind surged and shattered the ripples. Situ Muyang took the lead and arrived at Yutian Creek after crossing the Archkay Lake. At this moment, almost all the disciples had gathered at Zhongzhen Qian Peak. Everyone was fighting fiercely. Everyone was fighting with their lives on the line to enter the Tianfeng ruins. Why is Yutian Palace stopping us from entering the Myriad Sword Alliance? Situ Muyang's voice shook the sky like a tidal wave. Chilala. Suddenly, everyone stopped fighting and looked at Situ Muyang in the sky. Their eyes were filled with surprise and curiosity. Is there anyone from Yutian Palace coming out to speak? Duguyuma had also arrived. His blue eyes were focused as he looked at the sky. His gentle voice was heard throughout the mountains and rivers. Who are these people? Their cultivation is very high. Should we ask Elder Senior Brother for help? Everyone looked at each other. A few of the disciples' eyes flickered as they quickly left the crowd and went to the pavilion. At this moment, Jun Hao Ian and Elder Gyue were standing in a row on the pavilion. They were looking out through the gap. Leave us. We know. Jun Hao Ian's face was solemn. After the disciples left, he turned to the group of elders and Gyue and asked, Palace Master Gyue, why did we stop Miyang and Duguyuma? Long Pasan stood behind him and said in a low voice, Hao Qian, you don't know this. Why don't you take a look at the situation in Sky Barbarian? Among the 5 aristocratic families, Su, Yi, and the Long clan are on par. Yin clan and Thunderfire Temple are on Su Yi's side. Sky Sea City has surrendered to the Long clan. Only the Myriad Sword Alliance is left. So it's important to know which side the Myriad Sword Alliance is on, Luo Wuya said in a low voice. Gyue stroked his white beard and said faintly, the Myriad Sword Alliance did not send their elders. Instead, they sent Situ Muyang and Duguyuma, who are close to Su Yi. I wonder what Dugu Chung is planning. Is he really trying to please Su Yi? Chapter 23:55. Then I'll go out and meet them. After all, I know them. It's not good to let my brothers hold them off. Jun Hao Ian volunteered. It's not good to know them. Just pretend that we're not here. Anyway, everyone in Yutian Palace has been cultivating recently. Let Situ and the rest be the alchemy stones. If we can drag it out until Su Yi comes out, let's drag it out until Su Yi comes out. Let Su Yi make his own decision. Immediately, Guyu shook his head and took a deep breath before he spoke coldly. Zhongzhen Front Peak. There was no elder, and Jun Hao Ian did not come out either. Thousands of disciples of Yutian Palace and Tian Yao School looked solemn. Looking at Situ's cold expression, everyone swallowed a mouthful of saliva. What's wrong? Is there no one in Yutian Palace? Situ Muyang said loudly. At this moment, the disciple who came out of the pavilion went straight to Tun Tun. When he reached Tun Tun's feet, the disciple trembled and said, Master Tun. His voice was extremely soft. Tun Tun, who slowly opened her eyes, noticed the situation in front of her. She then saw Duguyuma and Situ Muyang, whom she had never seen before. She sent a message that was mixed with vitality and said, What happened while I was sleeping? Why is Miss Dugu here? The disciple's face was pale. Just Tun Tun's voice was enough to make him excited. His vitality was stirred up. He moved to Tun Tun's ear and whispered, Master Tun, listen to me. It's like this. On the other hand, Situ Muyang was even angrier when he saw that no one was paying attention to him. He turned around and looked at Duguyuma. The latter's face was also pale. Sister Yuma, what should we do? Situ Muyang lowered his voice. Duguyuma's eyes softened. Her cold gaze slowly swept across the shocked faces of the crowd. She sent a message with vitality and said, Do whatever you want. Didn't you see that even Jun Hao Ian didn't come out? The elders of Yutian Palace did it on purpose. Suddenly, Situ Muyang's fighting spirit condensed. The fierce wind turned into a boundless illusion. With a twist of his body, he rushed toward the thousands of people. Boom! The wind howled as countless tiny wind blades struck the heaven and earth. At this instant, wind and lightning suddenly swept through the sky, and its might was impressive. At this moment, everyone felt that Situ Myong's strength was not as weak as his age suggested. At the very least, many of the 20-something-year-old youths present here could not even reach Situ Myong's level of cultivation. Eyes filled with fear trembled. In the sky, the tyrannical and destructive wind attribute energy seemed to be able to destroy everything. Who? In the distant sky, two terrifying lightning bolts shrouded the area amidst the swirling clouds. As soon as the light spoke, it instantly wrapped around Situ Myong's wind attribute. At some unknown time, a vast expanse of energy had appeared all around him. Within this vast sea of energy, Situ Myong couldn't move at all. Myong, seeing that the situation was not right, Dugayuma's eyes lit up, and the silver-white, long sword slashed through the air. The sharp edge of the sword stirred up boundless spatial ripples, instantly shattering the energy barrier around Situ Myong. Boom! When the surrounding energy disappeared, Dugayuma saw Tuntin, who was as steady as a mountain, sitting a few thousand meters away from him. Tuntin, is Sui in the Imperial Palace? We're here to see Sui. Dugayuma's eyes were filled with joy. As long as he saw the desolate engulfing heavenly beast, Dugayuma felt relieved. Above the void, the sound of a great bell reverberated like a divine sound. Tuntin looked down at the heaven and earth like a boulder, as if she was looking down on thousands of ants. Her aura was domineering and determined. Miss Yuma, my master is in the palace. However, he's cultivating in seclusion. If you want to see him, you'll have to pass the test. Test. Situ Myong rolled his eyes, looking at the gigantic beast that he had never seen before. The pair of lightning-like eyes made his heart skip a beat and his soul tremble. Following Tuntin's gaze, the people from the Myriad Sword Alliance noticed that everyone from the Imperial Palace had gathered here for the test. You'll be able to see my master if you're one of the 900 remaining. Tuntin looked at Dugayuma apologetically. Suddenly, Situ Myong's eyes lit up. He nodded at Dugayuma and said loudly, "All right, come on." Myong. Dugayuma's face was solemn. They had come to the Myriad Sword Alliance to do something. If something went wrong and they offended the Imperial Palace, it would not be worth it. Situ Myong waved his hand and said to the disciples of the Imperial Palace, "The 10 of you can come at me together. To save time, I'm going to see my junior marshal uncle." "How dare you? You're too arrogant. Do you really think the Imperial Palace is a pushover? Brothers, follow me. So what if he's from the Myriad Sword Alliance? We'll show him the power of the Imperial Palace." Whoosh! The 10 disciples of the Origin Void Realm rushed up to the sky and looked at Situ Myong angrily. Yuan Shi erupted from his body, and a powerful soul energy gathered together to form a shocking rumbling sound, like the roar of thunder. At this time, Situ Myong was already standing at the front. His Imperial Wind battle armor stood straight. He stared coldly at the disciples of Yutian Palace and waved his hand. "Come on." As soon as Situ Myong shouted, a strong wind attribute energy spread out from his body and soared into the sky. It was like a violent storm in the 9 prefectures. In an instant, it enveloped the entire heavenly drive river. Whoosh! The 10 people looked at the phantom that was charging at them. Their snow-white feathers turned into countless tiny wind blades. Just as their pupils were about to dilate, Situ Myong had already arrived in front of them. Divine light shrouded him, and he pushed his hands horizontally. A powerful force enveloped them. Bang! 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 In the blink of an eye, the 10 figures were sent flying back like kites with broken strings. Everyone was petrified when they saw this scene. Their jaws dropped to the ground. This kid was at the 6th level of the Origin Emperor realm. He was already very powerful. How could he kill those of a higher level? Again, 20 of you. Situ Myong shouted. His provocative words caused the disciples of the Imperial Palace to erupt with anger. He was looking down on them. Under the pressure of the wind attribute energy, it only took a moment for another 20 figures to crawl back and fall to the ground. Considering Situ Muyang's Origin Emperor Realm cultivation, there were at most 3 or 4 Origin Emperor Realm experts among the 20 experts. Now that they were beaten back again, the disciples of the Imperial Palace started to lose their composure. Chapter 2356. 30 people. Those of the Origin Emperor Realm attack. The more he fought, the more excited he became. Situ Muyang opened his starry eyes wide and said angrily. As the fight got more and more intense, Situ Muyang had completely forgotten his purpose for coming here. The mighty pressure of the Origin Emperor Realm poured out as if it was overlooking the heavens and earth, surging and surging endlessly. This guy is just like Su-Yi. He doesn't care about anything when he fights. I'm afraid that Su-Yi won't come out, but he's already at odds with the Yuqian Palace. Duguyuma shook his head. At the same time, all the elders in the pavilion were nervously watching the Myriad Sword Alliance's challenge. The Yuqian Palace had always been aloof and indifferent. It was the first time they were challenged to such a state by a little guy. Damn it, brat. Do you really think there's no one in the Yuqian Palace? Is there no one in the Yuqian Palace? Long Pasan cursed loudly. How Ian? Have you seen this little guy around Su-Yi before? Guyue smiled as his expression became more and more complicated as he turned to look at Jun Haoyan. Jun Haoyan quickly went closer to observe and shook his head after a while, indicating that he didn't know him. Judging from the performance just now, Situ Muyang's cultivation was enough to amaze Jun Haoyan, who was known as a genius. However, he had never seen this little guy before. As for why he called Su-Yi Jr. martial uncle, he was even more confused. I've never seen him before. I don't know why he keeps calling Su-Yi Jr. martial uncle. Jun Haoyan smiled bitterly. This brat is too much. Even if he's Su-Yi's brother, isn't he slapping Su-Yi's face by bullying the Yuqian Palace like this? Su-Yi's first wife is Palace Master Xiaoman. Long Pashan's face turned red. How could someone with a fiery temper like him endure such humiliation? He knew that he had misspoken and immediately became listless. In front of the window, Gua narrowed his eyes as a cold light surged from his kind eyes. He said softly, "Let them do what they want. Don't worry, old friends. Is there really no one else in Yuqian Palace?" Jun Haoyan smiled as well. He looked at Long Pasan, Luo Wuya, and the others behind him and said respectfully, "Elders, please be patient. If it is really not enough, Haoyan will go and fight again." Hearing this, Long Pasan, Nie Shuangjue, and the others shrugged and continued to watch helplessly. Since he was stalling, he had to act like he was stalling. It was unknown if the disciple who had informed them had given instructions, but one batch of disciples after another rushed into the void. Above the void, Situ Muyang, who was fighting like the wind, saw more and more disciples coming at him. His fighting spirit also reached its peak. Pushing his hands forward, a vast and mighty wind attribute energy pressure surged out from his body. A violent wind blew, and the void trembled. Bang, bang, bang. As the number of people increased, the fighting spirit of the 30 disciples was instantly ignited, surrounding Situ Muyang in the center. Everyone's terrifying soul energy rushed to the heavens and earth. Visible energy light pillars swept across the heavens and earth. Brat, let's see how arrogant you can be. Even if you are Sect Master Su's friend, it is not your turn to behave atrociously here. You want to enter the secret realm and snatch the opportunity from us? You are still too inexperienced. Brat, we will let you suffer a little today. Don't say that we are bullying you with numbers. Everyone, let's attack together and end this brat. Don't embarrass the Imperial Palace. As the voice faded, the 30 experts shouted in unison. Among them, 10 of them were at the 3rd level of the Origin Emperor Realm. Suddenly, their hand seals changed. Suddenly, the shadows of beasts appeared in the space around them. Their huge, ferocious heads wreaked havoc in the courtyard. Their ferocious auras caused the souls of those who saw them to feel a piercing pain. Roar! When the shadows of the beasts were formed, the light in their eyes was cold and gloomy. Their huge bodies instantly occupied a large part of the void, and their auras shook the heavens. Kaka! On the opposite side, the beasts surrounded them. The terrifying energy that spread out caused countless spatial cracks to appear in the surrounding space. Looking at such a terrifying power from afar, all the disciples of the imperial palace were frightened. Immediately, there was a flash of joy. With such a power spreading out, it seemed like this battle was finally going to end. Muyang, be careful. Let me help you. Seeing that the situation wasn't right, Dugiyuma's face instantly tensed up. 10 Origin Emperor Realm experts and 20 Origin Void Realm experts. Sita Muyang had just reached the 6th level of the Origin Emperor Realm. It wasn't easy for him to resist until now. In the void, Sita Muyang looked indifferent. He opened his arms, and the snow-white armor wrapped around his body again. His eyes instantly became clear and tranquil. A faint smile appeared on Situ Muyang's face as he said with a smile, "Sister, back off. 30 experts. What's there to be afraid of? Let me show you the new move that I have comprehended." Situ Muyang's cry erupted once again after his voice sounded. Immediately, his body twisted and an energy aura that was like a spatial storm surged around Situ Muyang's body. Everywhere it passed, the surrounding space collapsed inch by inch, and cracks continued to appear. What is this brat doing? What a powerful soul energy. Does this brat have another move? Come on, don't lose to him. Below, thousands of eyes were trembling. Situ Muyang's aura had become more terrifying. Was this really the power of a 6th-level Origin Emperor Realm expert? In the void, Situ Muyang instantly closed his eyes and stood proudly in the storm. The domineering aura between his eyebrows instantly infected everyone present. Go! Among the 30 experts, the leading disciple wielded his long sword and slashed at Situ Muyang's head. In an instant, 30 rays of light fell from the sky like meteors and crushed Situ Muyang's body instantly. Boom! A thunderous explosion resounded through the sky, and the surging soul energy directly shattered the space above the peak of the central quake into pieces, withered away piece by piece. Muyang, Dugiyuma, and a few experts from the Myriad Sword Alliance rushed forward. Halfway through, they suddenly stopped. The ferocious energy rays stopped halfway around Sita Muyang and were unable to move forward. Buzz, buzz. As the rays of light dissipated, Sita Muyang made his move under everyone's gaze. He raised his cold eyes slightly and suddenly pushed his hands horizontally. The power of the storm that surrounded his body resounded in the heavens and earth. Wind Feather Sword Essence. Jade Frost Technique. In the next moment, Situ Muyang raised his hand gently, and the huge storm around him had already turned into countless ferocious and strange sword shadows. Along with the extreme frost energy, it started to snow heavily in the peak of the peak. Boom! The 10 gigantic beasts seemed to have met a formidable opponent. Under the sky full of sword shadows, they could no longer move and soon turned into light fragments. Chapter 23:57. Following that, Situ Muyang's sword wave overpowered the 30 people's energy. Like a ferocious warrior's strongest counterattack, the endless sword intent of wind and snow collapsed on the bodies of the 30 experts. What? The 30 experts saw that the sword essence was right in front of them, but their hands and feet were bound. They could only watch as they turned into broken leaves and shot back to the ground. Bang! 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 Following a series of explosions, the 30 powerhouses were defeated. It was a complete defeat. In front of the central peak, all eyes in the distant space were focused on this youth with monstrous combat strength. Looking at Situ Muyang's appearance, was he really only 16 or 17 years old? Situ Muyang stood calmly in the air. His eyes were pure as if they had been cleansed by the wind and snow. Sita Muyang felt that he had crossed the line as he looked at the people of Heavenly Palace who were howling on the ground. Muyang, you managed to cultivate the wind feather sword in the Myriad Sword Mountain. Dugayuma rushed up with his eyes wide open. It was as if he was looking at a monster. Sita Muyang scratched his head and said softly, Junior Granduncle is so powerful that I had to hide in the Myriad Sword Mountain and practice like a madman. Grandfather only let me out because I managed to make some progress recently. Hearing this, Dugayuma shook his head and looked at Situ. He sighed and said, No wonder Second Elder likes you so much. Whoosh, whoosh. Snowflakes filled the sky, and it was bone-chilling. The entire Heavenly Palace had turned into a world of frost and snow. At this moment, everyone present felt a chill in their hearts when they looked at the young man from the Myriad Sword Alliance. They were no less terrified than the flying snow in front of them. How did he manage to cultivate the wind feather sword? Could it be that everyone who was with Su-Yi was a monster? I'm sorry. Brothers, I'm sorry for messing up the drive the Heaven River in a moment of excitement. I apologize for that. Sita Muyang's attitude was sincere as he repeatedly apologized. However, when he looked at the people from Heavenly Palace below him, they felt even more terrified. Dugayuma hurriedly stopped Sita Muyang, shook his head, and said softly, Aren't you rubbing salt on his wound? Forget it. Let's not compete anymore. Let's wait for Su-Yi here. Sita Muyang seemed to have understood something. Like a child who had done something wrong, he stood upright in the void and said softly, Then what about the matter that grandfather asked me to do? That will depend on your junior martial granduncle. It's best if you don't come to Imperial Palace in the future. Dugayuma chuckled. Together with the other experts of the Myriad Sword Alliance, they pushed their palms forward and rays of blazing blue light shone. Streams of scorching hot aura seeped into the void, causing everyone's eyes to light up for no reason. Even their souls began to thaw. After a long time, the onlookers began to pant heavily. The scene just now was too strange. Looking at Sita Muyang in the air, the people of Heavenly Drive Palace didn't dare to face him head-on. Rather than saying that they wanted to challenge him again, it was more like they didn't want to embarrass themselves again. From 10 people to 20 people, then to 30 people, they were all beaten back by Sita Muyang. If more people from Imperial Palace were to join the battle, it would be a disgrace even if they won. Sigh. The sound of people sucking in their breaths filled the entire area. Thousands of disciples stiffened as they watched the snow in the sky turn into water droplets and drift away. No one spoke, and no one dared to speak. In the pavilion, there were only two kinds of emotions, shock and cursing. They were shocked that Sita Muyang was so talented, and they were angry that 30 people couldn't even defeat a young man. Swordwill, Long Pasan, who had a loud voice, lowered his voice for the first time when he saw Sita Muyang's move. All the elders present were silent. Their livid eyes were fixed on Jun Haoyan and Guyu, who were standing by the window. Imperial Palace can't be left alone. I'll go and challenge him. I hope that Su-Yi won't blame me for bullying him. Jun Haoyan looked at Palace Master Guyu. Although he was also stunned by Sita Muyang's talent, he was still the senior brother of Imperial Palace. He couldn't embarrass Imperial Palace. Guyu took a deep breath and said softly, This kid is talented, but he doesn't have a sharp edge. It's really rare. This kid isn't challenging anymore. If you go and win, it won't be a good thing. Do you want people to say that our Imperial Palace is narrow-minded? Or do you want us to take out your trump card to control the situation? Immediately, all the elders were silent. Elder Guyu smiled and said softly, The challenge is just an interlude. The real main character will appear soon. Isn't Su-Yi cultivating? Why is it so fast? Jun Haoyan asked. Guyu looked into the distance and looked at Tunton, who was as black as a mountain. He said, Brother Kwanga has been in there for a while. Do you think the desolate engulfing heavenly beast won't tell Su-Yi about the chaos in the front peak? The timing is just right. It's best to leave some room for imagination in this battle. Palace Master, you're very thoughtful. Luo Wuya and the others nodded. The time was almost up. Imperial Palace had only sent some elite disciples. To be honest, none of their core disciples had gone up yet. No one had lost face. Guyue and the elders were waiting for Su Yi to come out. They were waiting for the Myriad Sword Alliance's real goal to surface. In the depths of the pavilion, an incomparably rich and exotic fragrance surged out, and an incomparably enormous amount of energy seeped out through the walls, drawing the attention of all the elders present. Dan Honggong held the pill box in his hand and shouted at Elder Guyue like a crazy experimenter. "It's done! It's done! It's done!" The elders' faces were filled with excitement. Dan Honggong was naturally refining a pill that could restore one's physical body. Dan Honggong held the jade box in his hand and was overjoyed. He said loudly, "Spiritual materials are indeed spiritual materials. It's really easy to refine. This is definitely my proudest masterpiece." Immediately, opening the jade box, a sky-green medicinal aura shrouded everyone through the small gap. The elders' eyes lit up when they smelled the medicinal aura. They felt extremely comfortable, as if their bodies were about to go limp. Roar! At the same time, Tunten once again erupted with a terrifying, formless aura. She opened her mouth and spat out a torrential wave of energy that swept across the sky. The earth-shattering commotion instantly shocked everyone present. Under their fearful gazes, a green figure appeared in front of Tunten. Standing in the air, the green figure was extremely fast. His body seemed to have merged with heaven and earth. A domineering aura rushed into the sky. Sec Master Su. It's Sec Master Su. The real powerhouse of Imperial Palace is here. Chapter 2358. Kid, your martial granduncle is here. Do you still dare to fight? The people of Yuqian Palace who regained their senses collectively cheered, shouting excitedly towards the green figure that was like a storm, and did not forget to hoot a few words towards Situ Muyang in their excitement. Once Su Yi returned, everyone immediately seemed to have a backbone, and the spirit between their brows also finally returned. Young martial granduncle. Situ Muyang cheered in surprise, shouting loudly towards the green-robed figure that was flying over. At this time, Su Yi stood in the air, gazing at Situ Muyang with a slight smile. His gaze slowly swept across the entire place. Raising his eyelids, he said, "Stinking brat, did you come to my Yuqian Palace to show off?" "Hee, I accidentally caused it to be like this." "Young martial granduncle, don't blame me." Situ Muyang laughed honestly. Looking at Su Yi, whose aura covered the sky and earth, he could not help but be shocked in his heart. Opposite, Su Yi made a hand gesture towards Situ Muyang, the corners of his mouth full of smiles, and said, "I heard that your sword intent is quite powerful. Come on, use your full strength. Let me take a look." Situ Muyang was immediately a little embarrassed and said in a serious voice, "Young martial granduncle, are you sure? This sword intent of mine is quite famous." Seeing Situ Muyang say this, Su Yi also had the intention to give it a try, and immediately said, "Less nonsense. Hurry up." At this time, Suruga's figure also landed in the crowd, slightly sizing up Su Yi in front of people, a hint of praise flashing across his eyes. Suruga was naturally clear that cultivating in the desolate, swallowing, heaven-shocking beast, even with his guidance, the heavenly wind sword intent was not that easy to get started with. Su Yi, who could not comprehend the heavenly wind sword intent, absolutely would not let go of any opportunity to cultivate sword intent. "Then you be careful, young martial granduncle." Situ Muyang's face instantly turned cold, and a cold shout came out again. A bone-chilling aura rolled out. Seeing that Su Yi did not have the slightest movement to resist, Situ Muyang frowned. He had already reminded Su Yi just now. Could it be that he was looking down on him? "Young martial granduncle, I'm not the child from back then. You have to take this move." As soon as his voice fell, Situ Muyang no longer hesitated. Boundless ice aura spread out in the air, and the void that had just melted turned cold again. Frost sword shadows that filled the sky were released from Situ Muyang's body. Bang! Suddenly a thunderous sound, an aura that made one's heart trembling, for no reason, for no reason, for no reason, for no reason, to make people to, for no reason, no reason, for no reason. Boom! In an instant, the heavenly drive river trembled again, and the wind feather sword intent, even more ferocious than before, swept through heaven and earth. At this moment, the hearts of the people of the heavenly drive palace trembled. This destructive pressure was enough to make people's hearts crawl and their souls trembled. Many of the people with low cultivations immediately turned pale and spat out blood. At the same time, the unparalleled sword intent rushed over, and Su-yi, who was surrounded by the sharp sword chi, suddenly felt his soul freeze for no reason. His body was like a fried dough twist, and he could not move at all. What a strong sword intent! Although it can't compare to the heavenly wind sword intent, it's still considered an extremely strong cultivation technique in the Tianyin continent. After a long time, Su-yi, who was in the storm, rapidly spread out the golden dragon chi, and at the same time protected his body. The corners of Su-yi's mouth curled up slightly. Having already comprehended Situ Muyang's sword intent, Su-yi had a direct feeling in his heart. His god-slaying sword might and Situ Muyang's wind feather sword were two different forms. Direct and unrestrained was the biggest flaw of his god-slaying sword might. From this, it could be seen that Su-yi's understanding of sword intent was not deep enough. In comparison, although Situ Muyang's sword intent had changed in form, it was already a huge leap and improvement. Through the activation of soul energy, changing the sword intent was definitely not something an ordinary person could do. Not bad. With this understanding, Muyang, you're worthy of the title of a peerless genius. In the storm, Su-yi's cold voice slowly spread out, instantly causing everyone to feel a chill in their hearts. Under such a terrifying attack, Su-yi could still remain calm and speak as he pleased. Was he looking down on people? Everyone looked at Situ Muyang, and the latter's expression changed rapidly. At this moment, even Situ Muyang's eyes surged with a trace of terror. Everyone had already seen how powerful his wind feather sword was. Now, in the face of junior martial uncle's calmness, Situ Muyang actually felt that his sword intent was like a dragonfly skimming the surface of the water, without the slightest lethality. Damn it! Situ Muyang's fighting spirit rose again, and all the soul energy in his mind was activated, and a powerful sword intent descended between heaven and earth once again. Chila! After the sword intent was activated, Situ Muyang's pupils trembled, and he felt that the sword intent in the air was no longer under his control. The figure of Su-yi in front of him instantly became incomparably tall. For a moment, Situ Muyang felt that his energy was being devoured by heaven and earth, and an even more terrifying heavenly might was collapsing on his body from the opposite side. Roar! It was unknown whether it was the sound of metal or the howl of a ferocious beast, but in a moment, all the ferocious energy in the air had disappeared, and the boundless ice energy dissipated without a trace like a gust of wind. In front of him, Su-yi stood with his hands behind his back, calmly taking a step forward. His figure was like lightning, and although it seemed slow, he was actually in front of Situ Muyang in the blink of an eye. After exhausting his soul energy, Situ Muyang's eyes were filled with shock. He looked at Su-yi as if he was looking at the ruler of heaven and earth, and his deep eyes were extremely domineering and incomparably disdainful. Looking at Situ Muyang, who was a little limp, Su-yi raised one hand and directly supported Situ Muyang. The energy in the air swept up, blowing the hair of the two people high up in the air. Junior martial uncle, what cultivation level have you reached? Situ Muyang's face was filled with disbelief. He really couldn't understand why he was so insignificant in front of Su-yi. The corner of Su-yi's mouth curled up as he looked at Yuma. The latter didn't find it strange and said softly, Your junior martial uncle is already at the first stage of the Yuan domain realm. As soon as he finished speaking, Su-Yi gently raised his hand again, and the space inexplicably trembled. In the sky above, all the energy storms instantly disappeared. At that moment, Sita Muyang completely felt a kind of fear. He looked at Su-Yi in shock and said faintly, "Junior martial uncle, I admit defeat." Instantly, everyone present cheered and shouted excitedly at Su-Yi. The Yuqian Palace's reputation had finally been reclaimed. Soon, the disciples present quickly made space for them, and Su-Yi pulled Sita Muyang and the rest to the front peak of Zhongzhen Peak. The rest of the disciples tactfully retreated and didn't stay any longer. Today's competition also ended with Su-Yi's victory. The brothers hugged each other tightly. Since the last time they parted, the two of them hadn't seen each other for a long time. As they shared their experiences, Sita Muyang's respect and reverence for Su-Yi was even more obvious. Chapter 2359. Junior martial uncle, you're the person I admire the most in this life. No, the next life, and the life after that. None of those *T geniuses in the Myriad Sword Alliance can be compared to you. Su-Yi smiled indifferently in the face of Sita Muyang's praise. Su-Yi patted Sita Muyang's shoulder and looked at Dugiyama, who was standing next to Sita Muyang. He then asked softly, "Why are you guys here?" "Miss Yuma, didn't you just return to the Myriad Sword Alliance?" Sita Muyang and Dugiyama immediately stood up. The Myriad Sword Alliance's experts behind them also looked serious. "Junior martial uncle, it's like this. We're here this time." Sita Muyang raised his hand and gestured to the Myriad Sword Alliance's experts behind him. "Sec Leader Su, it's done. It's done." At the same time, an even more shocking voice resounded from the top of the pavilion. Dozens of fierce streamers flew out from the pavilion. Gu Yue and Long Pasan followed closely behind Dan Honggong. Dan Honggong held the jade box in his hand and shouted excitedly like a madman. Sita Muyang, Dugiyama, and the others were shocked when they saw this. They swallowed the words that were about to come out of their mouths. "Muyang, we'll talk about your matter later." Su-Yi's eyes lit up when he heard Dan Honggong's voice. Swish! Su-Yi took a big stride forward and arrived in front of Dan Honggong in an instant. He asked loudly, "Is it really done?" Dan Honggong carefully placed the jade box in front of Su-Yi. His hands were trembling and his eyes were filled with joy. His trembling beard swayed wildly like willow catkins. "Fortunately, it's done. Fortunately, it's done. Sect Leader Su, this is definitely the most perfect masterpiece of my life." Dan Honggong's spittle flew everywhere. Seeing the jade box in Su-Yi's hand, a trace of pain flashed through his eyes. Looking at Dan Honggong, Su-Yi's heart began to beat wildly. At the same time, Qi Feihong and Ling Qinxue also stared at the box in Su-Yi's hand with their eyes wide open. Through Qi Feihong and Ling Qinxue, Su-Yi knew that if a soul body wanted to recover its physical body, it needed three things: serene flame flower, heavenly fragrant pistol, and moon devour Bodhi goo. However, no one knew what kind of thing the three of them would combine into. No one had ever seen it before. Holding his breath, Su-Yi slowly opened the jade box. An extremely dense medicinal scent quickly drifted out along with a dazzling light. Immediately, the heaven and earth energy in the surrounding area was stirred up rapidly. Everyone present held their breaths, and everyone's Yuan Qi energy that resonated with the heaven and earth energy was stirred up. Everyone present was a primitive emperor and origin ancestor realm expert. Such a spiritual medicine could actually cause such a huge reaction to them. It could be seen how powerful the spiritual medicine was. What a powerful spiritual medicine! Sita Muyang and Dugiyama cried out involuntarily. Then they looked at Su-Yi. After checking that there were no mistakes, Su-Yi smiled wantonly and slowly closed the jade box. His face was filled with excitement. Looking at everyone, he said softly, "Everyone, Su-Yi will make a move first." As soon as he finished speaking, Su-Yi activated the Fuyao 100 transformation steps to the extreme. Flowing light flashed across the entire place, leaving behind a string of afterimages in the air as he rushed into Tunton's arms. For such an important matter, Su Yi would definitely not let anyone disturb him. Only by devouring these two spiritual treasures in the Tianfeng historical site could he ensure that Ling Qianxue and Qi Feihong's resurrection would be foolproof. Suruga walked up quickly from behind and looked at Su Yi's back in fear. Guyue laughed and nodded at Suruga, indicating that he did not need to worry. He said, "I'm afraid that even you, the master, do not know how many secrets your disciple has. Don't be impatient. Let's go to my place and have 2 cups of tea and have a chat." Suruga shook his head and smiled. Then he looked at Situ Muyang and said seriously, "Little thing, don't you know how to greet me when you see me?" Being reprimanded by the handsome man in front of him, Situ Muyang was a little scared. He immediately bowed and said, "Senior, I'm sorry for being rude." Situ Muyang pays his respects to Senior. Hearing this, Suruga was stunned and smiled bitterly. Now that his appearance had returned to normal, his snow-white hair was devilishly charming and elegant. It was no wonder that this little guy could not recognize him. Suddenly, he laughed and said in his original voice, "Little guy, listen to me again. Who am I?" Situ Muyang frowned and listened to Suruga's voice with some doubts. After thinking carefully, he suddenly understood and opened his mouth wide. You. Situ Muyang said you 3 times in a row, but his eyes were still filled with disbelief. Dugima walked up and patted Situ Muyang. He asked in confusion, "What's wrong with you, Situ Muyang? Who is this senior?" Situ Muyang turned his head and looked at Dugima. He suddenly smiled and rushed to Suruga with a scream. He hugged Suruga tightly and said, "Great Grandmaster, it's really you. I thought I heard wrong." In an instant, Situ Muyang looked up and down at Suruga, whose appearance had changed greatly. He was moved and said, "Great Grandmaster, the rumors in Shunjian Gate are true. It turns out that you were really handsome when you were young. You're still handsome when you're old." Suruga laughed loudly and patted Situ Muyang's shoulder with great comfort. He touched Situ Muyang's head intimately and said in a low voice, "You little guy, you're still so sweet. It's all thanks to Sui. Not only did he restore my appearance, but he also helped me improve my cultivation." Suruga's cultivation had been stagnant for decades. Now that he had recovered, his cultivation naturally improved tremendously. His cultivation was like a torrent that could not be restrained. Young Grandmaster is really amazing. I heard that he has already reached the Yuan domain realm. Situ Muyang showed an extremely envious expression. Suruga nodded. When he was cultivating his sword intent, he saw that Su Yi was only at the 7th level of Yuan Zone realm. In fact, Su Yi had already broken through to the Yuan domain realm. When they were fighting, Suruga saw it. He nodded and said, "You little guy, Su Yi was only at the 7th or 8th level of Yuan Emperor realm when he was at your age. Your speed is not slower than his." At this moment, Dugi Yuma stepped forward leisurely and said respectfully to Suruga, "Yuma greets Yamasword." Suruga looked at Dugi Yuma from head to toe, especially that pair of clear blue eyes. He nodded and said, "The successor of Dugu Xie, your sword intent is superb. You're really extraordinary." When Dugu Xie was mentioned, the corner of Dugi Yuma's mouth twitched. He looked embarrassed and stepped aside. "Great Grandmaster, Sister Yuma is very powerful. She's one of the best in the Myriad Sword Alliance." Guyue looked at Situ Muyang and Dugi Yuma and said with a smile, "If that's the case, let's have a seat at my place." Chapter 2360. Everyone followed Guyue back to the pavilion, and Jun Haoyan and Dugi Yuma chatted along the way. "Haoyan, where did you go?" Dugi Yuma looked at Jun Haoyan and asked him deliberately. The palace master of Yutian Palace did not come out because he was refining medicine, but it was rude of Jun Haoyan not to come out. Jun Haoyan was embarrassed by the question, so he smiled and changed the topic. Dugi Yuma smiled and shook her head. She pulled Situ Muyang and said, Muyang, I have a good friend in Tianlong City, Lan Yelian. If you go to Tianlong City in the future, remember to tell her not to come to Yuqian Palace, because Brother Jun Haoyan is not very enthusiastic. Hearing this, Jun Haoyan stopped and looked back at Duga Yuma. He smiled bitterly and said, Yuma, I have my difficulties too. If I really meet Miss Lan, you can't say that. Just kidding. You. Duga Yuma smiled and quickly pulled Situm Muyang to catch up. On the pavilion, everyone sat in rows and listened to Suruga practicing the sword essence with Su Yi in Tunton's body. Situm Muyang suddenly shouted, Great Grandmaster, did he succeed? Has little Marshal Granduncle succeeded? Su Kwanga shook his head and squinted his eyes. He said with some regret, Sword essence can only be understood but not explained in words. Once you understand it, you understand it. Su Yi has a feeling about sword essence, but the sword essence he is practicing is so obscure that even I can only give him hints. He has not made any progress. Situ Muyang and Duga Yuma smiled at each other. Their eyes were full of surprise. Sitting below, Duga Yuma's blue eyes flashed. She pursed her lips and said, Then, the chances are much higher. Situ Muyang and Duga Yuma's subtle expressions were seen by the experienced people of Yuqian Palace. Gyue, who was sitting at the top, smiled and said, Gyue has a question. Brother Kwanga is from Shunjian Gate, but this little brother is from the Myriad Sword Alliance. What's going on? Suddenly, Su Kwanga beckoned Situ Muyang to come in front of her. Her eyes were full of love and affection. She said gently, It all started from this boy's father. Situ Muyang's father, Situ Luyun, was married to Dugu Ying, the beloved daughter of Duga Hen, the second elder of the Myriad Sword Alliance. Back then, Situ Luyun went out to train and met Dugu Ying. Dugu Ying wanted to marry Situ Luyun no matter what. She even cut off all ties with the Myriad Sword Alliance for Situ Luyun, which shocked the Sword Alliance. Since then, Xinjiang Gate and the Myriad Sword Alliance had cut off all ties. It was not until Situ Muyang was born that Dugu Hen gave up. Dugu Hen took a fancy to Situ Muyang's talent and summoned his grandson back to the Myriad Sword Alliance. He poured a lot of effort into Situ Muyang. Therefore, Xinjiang Gate could be said to have a good relationship with the Myriad Sword Alliance because of Situ Muyang. That was why Xinjiang Gate's second position in Zhongzhou was unshakable. Guyue's cloudy eyes flashed with a cold light when he heard that. He said in a low voice, So he's Dugu Hen's grandson. No wonder he's so talented. No wonder. Long Pasan, Luo Wuya, and the others were more or less embarrassed as they smiled meaningfully. Suddenly, the atmosphere in the pavilion became awkward and strange. Situ Muyang, who was standing on the side, was puzzled. Could it be that his grandfather, Duga Hen, had provoked these elders? Great Martial Uncle, what happened to Grandpa? Why did Palace Lord Gyue and the others' expressions change when they heard Grandpa's name? Situ Muyang lowered his voice with a stiff expression. Suruga felt a little regretful after saying that. He shook his head and said seriously, It's the matter of the previous generation. Tell me honestly, why did your eccentric grandpa ask you to come here? Situ Muyang looked around and nodded solemnly. Grandpa asked me to come here this time because, once again, before he could finish his sentence, a long, resounding howl rang out from outside the pavilion. In an instant, it was as if the entire Heavenly Rider River was hit by an earthquake. Everyone in the pavilion could not sit still and rush to the window. At the same time, the vast square in front of the central peak was filled with rich, milky white energy. Medicinal qi was mixed in, and the energy surged to the heavens. It was like a paradise. This is? Duga Yuma's blue eyes flashed and looked through the white mist. Instantly, intense shock flashed in the depths of his eyes. In the milky white, immortal qi, a huge black shadow like a mountain stretched across the square. It was Tun Tun. Light surged around Tun Tun, and the surrounding mountains were dyed. The white energy was vast and majestic. It was enough to make people suck in a breath of cold air. Their eyes flashed with shock. Boom! Soon, a terrifying energy rushed out along with the light. The thundercloud eyes of the desolate, swallowing, heaven-shocking beast were like a volcano erupting. Lightning shot out and dyed the world. Everything turned into nothingness in an instant and spread out rapidly. "Come out!" Tun Tun shouted from the white mist. Tun Tun roared at the sky, and a vast energy crashed into the sky like a meteorite. When the white mist blew slightly, a vigorous voice was heard. Then, an old man wearing a dark blue robe and a small hat flew out of the white mist. The energy around the old man was like a rope. The energy flowed in circles, and the momentum was terrifying. "Who is that?" Guyue and the group of elders widened their eyes. They looked at the person who came out of Tun Tun and searched for memories of this person in their minds. Under everyone's surprised gaze, the old man's aura was heavy. His unique Yuan Qi bloomed brilliantly. His every move had the demeanor of a great expert. After passing through the white mist, the old man sat on the edge of the mountain. He took a deep breath and began to meditate. The more he looked, the more he felt something was wrong. Suruga's eyes suddenly turned cold. The memory of being hunted back then flashed through his mind like yesterday. He said softly, "This person is Qi Feihong." "Qi Feihong." Guyue's eyes were filled with shock as he looked at Suruga in disbelief. "Qi Feihong? The previous sect leader of the demons subduing sect. Qi Feihong?" Luo Huia sucked in a breath of cold air and said coldly, "Everyone said that this old man had disappeared for decades. Many people said that he was already dead. Why would he appear at Suyi's place?" Suddenly, Guyue and Suruga looked at each other and smiled. They finally understood why the demon-subduing sect was under Su Yi's control. "So it's to capture the leader first." Guyue laughed. Hearing that, everyone nodded. Their lips curled into a smile of understanding as they continued to look at the white mist. Chapter 2361. Suddenly, the heavens and earth trembled again, and an endless amount of powerful soul energy seeped out. Between the heavens and earth, 6 lightning pillars suddenly shot out from the sky. The huge energy body was like a heavenly punishment, causing the entire heavenly Rider Creek to tremble. Boom, boom, boom. 6 consecutive, huge energy movements resounded through the heavens and earth. When the 6 light pillars gathered together, the entire Zhongzhen peak instantly became dark. In the dark space, the energy created countless terrifying storms. Above the void, the lightning was like a chessboard, and the lights were scattered all over the mountains and rivers. What the hell is going on? This time, it was Suruga and Sitamuyang's turn to be surprised. Facing such a terrifying phenomenon, everyone present was shocked. They clenched their fists and didn't dare to make sound. After a few breaths, the elders present seemed to have understood something. They all took a step back with a serious expression. Instead of saying that they were shocked, it was better to say that they were respectful and solemn. "What's wrong with you guys?" Suruga frowned. At this moment, the energy outside the window was surging. Countless fierce lightning bolts were hovering in the sky, causing the sky to tremble. Guyu and the other elders all had solemn expressions on their faces as they half knelt on the ground and said in unison, "We welcome the birth of a 6th-rank soul master." 6th grade. As soon as they finished speaking, Situ Muyang and Dugayuma were still fine, but Suruga's expression changed crazily. Soul Masters were ranked from the 1st grade to the 7th grade. The 4th grade was equivalent to the Yuan Emperor realm, and the 5th grade was equivalent to the Yuan Ancestor realm. The 6th grade was very rare in the world, and the 7th grade was a level that only existed in legends. In the entire Yuqian Palace, only Duanmu Xiaomon soul cultivation had reached the 6th grade, and her martial cultivation had reached the half-step Yuan Tian realm. Guyue and the others had seen such a terrifying scene from Duanmu Xiaoman before. They didn't expect that the Yutian Palace would have another 6th grade soul master. Speaking until here, everyone's eyes flickered, and there was absolute respect in their eyes. "Junior Martial Uncle. It's Junior Martial Uncle." Situ Muyang's expression changed greatly, and his eyes became more solemn and respectful. "Ear," Suruga said in shock. Su-e. Dugiyuma pressed his lips tightly. He was as nervous as a spring, and his mouth was dry. At this moment, under everyone's astonished gazes, an incomparably huge aura fluctuation once again erupted from the central peak. It was as if it wanted to devour all the energy in the world. An incomparably domineering aura spread throughout the air. Boom! Following an earth-shattering explosion, a man in a green robe slowly walked out of the dark space. With every step he took, countless bolts of lightning in the surrounding space trembled. It was Su-e. Very quickly, when Su-e walked out completely, all the energy in the surrounding space had also disappeared. "It's Su-e!" Everyone present shouted in unison, peeking at the terrifying soul aura around his body. There was no doubt that he was a rank 6. At this moment, everyone present was extremely excited. In a short moment, they were about to pounce towards the front peak of the central quake, towards Su-e. "Wait, all of you stop!" Elder Guyu bellowed from behind. Everyone stopped in their tracks, and their eyes were filled with doubt and astonishment. Guyuet quickly walked forward and looked at the endless energy in the sky. He suppressed the excitement in his eyes and said, "There's another energy in Tun Tun's body, and it's from an even more terrifying expert. Even more terrifying." Long Pasan and the others heard this, and their faces froze. Looking at the overwhelming energy, everyone swallowed a mouthful of saliva. All the pores on their backs opened up as they waited with bated breaths. "Huh!" With a light shout, Su-e suddenly looked up, and his calm green robe fluttered quickly. In a short moment, an inexplicable, domineering aura swept across the sky, and he turned into a stream of light and came to Chi Fei Hong's side. Looking at Chi Fei Hong, Su-e nodded and took a step forward. He crossed his legs and bent his knees and began to absorb energy from the distorted space to stabilize his cultivation. A mysterious light enveloped his body, and Su-e entered a state of concentration, and soon he was not disturbed by the outside world. Roar! As the two of them entered a state of concentration, Tun Tun once again let out an even more shocking roar, shaking the mountains and rivers. The terrifying energy in its bloody mouth rushed into the sky, and in an instant, a huge wave of demonic energy rushed into the mountains and the earth. In the dark space, an arc of light shot out, and the sky collapsed, and the earth cracked, and the light rushed into the sky. An incomparably huge and shocking wind swept through the world, and in an instant, an extremely bewitching face of a beast appeared in the depths of the sky. Looking carefully, the beast's charming face was like the most perfect masterpiece of the heavens. Roar! Tun Tun and the huge beast's voices echoed across the sky, and a resounding energy explosion resounded in the sky. In the white mist and silver light, a charming and enchanting woman slowly walked out. Her figure was graceful, and her beautiful hair was stuck to her back. There was not a single flaw to be found on her graceful body, and she was incomparably alluring. As she walked out of the white mist, her mature aura and sexy lips revealed a myriad of emotions. This is another demon domain realm expert. Guyua looked at this demon expert, and he was very clear in his heart. Although this woman had bright eyes and white teeth, her ferocious cultivation aura was definitely not below the desolate devouring heaven beast. Too strong. Looking at the woman slowly walking out, the crowd could not help but exclaim in shock and fear. Seeing this scene, everyone's minds were in a mess. What was going on? Su-yi's body was hiding the previous sect leader of the demon subduing sect, and also this demon domain realm super demon expert, and he had even become a 6th grade soul master. Looking at the vast square, the white mist in the sky began to dissipate, and ferocious energy exploded in the sky above the square, as if it was the end of the world. Su-yi is really the son of a god. The secrets he has on him are more than others in their entire lives. Everyone looked at each other, and their eyes were filled with shock and helplessness. Such a strange and terrifying thing, and this unimaginable super demon expert caused everyone to be so shocked that they could not regain their senses for a long time. After a long while, the white mist completely dissipated and the dark clouds dispersed. The fluctuations between heaven and earth also disappeared, and in the end, it was as if nothing had happened. On the peak in front of the earthquake, a woman floated in the air like a demon saintess, and her body was shrouded in terrifying energy. Then, the woman's gaze was incomparably disdainful, and she slowly landed on the ground. But when she saw Su-yi, the woman's lips curled into a beautiful smile. Chapter 23:62. Landing beside Su-yi, the woman squatted down gently, holding her hands and looking at Su-yi, who was meditating. She was so affectionate that she looked down upon the world. Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air when they saw this. They were finally certain that Su-yi had been hiding such a terrifying honorable stage cultivator in his body all along. Should we go over now? Suruga stopped thinking and glanced back at the elders present. The elders also looked at each other awkwardly. From the looks of it, this demon venerable expert was extremely familiar with Su-yi and seemed to have some other feelings for him. Immediately, everyone looked at Gyue, hoping that Gyue could make a decision. Duguyuma and Situmuyang, who were standing at the side, had a complicated look in their eyes. Especially Duguyuma. Her red lips were tightly pursed, her curvy body was slightly tense, and her eyes were fluctuating. No need. Look, someone is more concerned about Su-yi than us. Just wait here for a moment. Gyue stroked his beard and smiled. Following Guyu's gaze, he looked into the distance and saw a fierce golden light shooting out from the peak after the epicenter, flying in the direction of the front peak. The golden light broke through the air at an extremely fast speed, drawing a beautiful arc in the air, moving forward quickly and dazzling. At this time, because of the dissipation of the energy of heaven and earth, Su-yi and Chi Feihong opened their eyes one after another. Wrapped in mysterious runes, Su-yi was shrouded in divine light. He raised his eyes slightly and saw the charming Ling Qianxue in front of him at first glance. Su-yi's dark and deep eyes were fixed on the amber pupils. That gaze that was enough to charm all things in the world suddenly made people's hearts beat wildly. One would be intoxicated by it if they looked at it more. No one could guess how there could be such an outstanding work of art in the world. Ling Qianxue's charming smile was like looking at the moon in the water, making people look forward to it 1,000 times. What's wrong? We haven't seen each other for a few years. Don't you recognize me? Ling Qianxue's watery eyes revealed a hint of anger, and her smoky eyebrows were slightly raised. Bang! Without the slightest hesitation, Su-yi suddenly stood up, spread out his powerful arms, and pulled Ling Qianxue into his embrace. Smelling the unique, demonic aura on Ling Qianxue's body, Su-yi's heart finally felt like a huge stone had been lifted off the ground. The corner of his mouth hooked up into a warm smile. At this moment, a firm and warm hug, no, even 1,000,000 hugs would not be enough to express Su-yi's longing for Ling Qianxue. Su-yi, being hugged by Su-yi like this, Ling Qianxue was obviously a little flustered. Her beautiful eyes were drowsy, and a wave of heart-stirring warmth touched Ling Qianxue's heartstrings. The corner of her mouth slightly curled up, and her entire body was powerless. She could only let Su-yi hug her. He slowly closed his eyes, and everything around him seemed to have stopped. It was as if everything had disappeared. There were only two of them in the world. Su-yi himself didn't know where this feeling for Ling Qianxue came from, but it really happened like this, and it was so thick and real. Smelling the seductive aura on Ling Qianxue's body, Su-yi's mind constantly recalled the past, and every scene seemed to be yesterday. For a whole 5 years, Su Yi and Ling Qinxue had been together for 5 years, but they had communicated in a strange way. Su Yi had thought about it countless times. If there was one person in this world who understood him, there was no doubt that it would be Ling Qinxue. His anger and joy were all tied up by Ling Qinshue's frown and smile. His thoughts were all alerted by Ling Qinshue's anger and anger. From the battle with the ice and fire double-headed demonic snake to the explosion of the demon pill. Then Ling Qinxue fell into a deep sleep. Finally, Ling Qinxue woke up in the Golden Rock's secret realm and walked hand in hand with him in the Demon Chi Forest. This was the memory of Su Yi and Ling Qinxue, and it was also a feeling that no one else could understand. Before she fell into a deep sleep, Ling Qinxue protected Su Yi. After she fell into a deep sleep, Su Yi traveled all over Sky Barbarian for Ling Qinxue. That day, Su Yi was just a cultivator with low martial arts. Now, Su Yi, who was standing in front of Ling Qinxue, was already an indomitable spirit. The current Su Yi, who could dominate the world, could finally say the words that had been in his heart for 1,000 times. Qinxue, I've finally waited for you. His bitter and hoarse voice was mixed with excitement as he spoke slowly. As Ling Qinxue listened, her fingers moved slightly, and her whole body stiffened. Unconsciously, after saying this, Su Yi's eyes were already filled with tears. Su Yi, who no longer knew what pain was still like the little rookie from 5 years ago in front of Ling Qinxue. Just like this, Ling Qinxue was hugged tightly by Su Yi in his arms. She was lovely and moving, as quiet as an orchid. She was no longer the invincible demon domain expert. She had been stored in this man's mind for countless days, but this was the first time they had interacted so intimately. With her arms wrapped around Su Yi's chest, Ling Qinxue gradually closed her eyes. She greedily wanted to have all of Su Yi, even if it was only for a second. After a moment, Ling Qinxue still chose to break free from Su Yi's embrace. Glancing sideways at Qi Feihong, who was pretending to be asleep, Ling Qinshue's face was like a peach blossom. She said in a serious voice, "You're now the master of a sect, and you're still crying for a little cat demon like me?" Su Yi stared at her, not wanting to move away for a moment. He stared at the delicate Ling Qinxue. Su Yi knew that Ling Qinshue's soft heart and weak bones only belonged to him. He immediately smiled and said, "In front of you, if I'm still a powerhouse, then there's nothing cute about me in this world." Loquacious. Ling Qinxue immediately took a deep breath, as if spitting out all the forbearance she had endured for the past few years. She tightly held onto Su Yi's arm, her eyes shining. Qila. In an instant, Ling Qinshue's expression changed, and a terrifying aura quickly spread out from behind her. The aura burst forth, and the entire void almost collapsed. Lightning flashed and thunder rumbled, and an endless, terrifying golden aura spread out, accompanied by a mighty heavenly might that rolled endlessly. Qinxue, put it down. Su Yi narrowed his eyes and immediately recognized that it was Lu Ruashi who came from the rear peak. He signaled Ling Qinshuo to relax. In the distance, Lu Ruashi, who was flying over, also felt a fierce energy wave rushing towards her. Her figure instantly drifted back like a willow leaf. Swish! A red light flashed in the air, and in the next second, Su Yi caught her firmly and landed on the ground. Standing up, Lu Ruashi looked at Su Yi and heaved a sigh of relief. Looking at Ling Qinshue's complicated expression, Lu Ruashi quickly smiled and said, "Su Yi, aren't you going to introduce me?" Hearing Lu Ruashi greeting her, Ling Qinshuo felt a little guilty for her rashness just now. She immediately walked over to Lu Ruashi and greeted her. "I didn't expect sister to be so beautiful." Lu Ruashi smiled faintly and directly held Ling Qinshue's soft hand. She looked up at Su Yi and reprimanded, "This is the sister Qinxue you're talking about, right?" Chapter 2363. What did I say that? Su Yi's eyes widened. He suddenly became nervous and doubtful. Lu Ruashi looked at Ling Qianxue gently and reservedly. Her lustrous eyes were filled with tenderness. She said seriously, "Did you forget what you said in your sleep?" Hearing Lu Ruashi's words, Su Yi was petrified. Did he have the habit of talking in his sleep? He turned to look at Ling Qianxue. "Why are you looking at me? When you were resting, I seal my spiritual sense." Ling Qianxue's eyes were like stars in the morning. She glanced into the distance in a panic. Her cheeks were slightly flushed, adding to her charm. "What I said is what I said." Lu Ruashi chuckled. Seeing that the two were a little embarrassed, Lu Ruashi's eyes flashed with a smile. She held their hands and said softly, "Sister Xiaoman once told me that all emotions are empty talk in the face of life and death. Only cherishing the people in front of you is real." Sister Xiaoman had waited for dozens of years for her brother, Qing Tian. Sister Xiaoman and I have also waited for Su Yi. Ruashi? Su Yi's gaze changed. He didn't expect Lu Ruashi, who was always gentle and quiet, to say such words. "You don't have to look at me like that. I like you, Su Yi. However, your footsteps won't be limited to Sky Barbarian Realm. There are many more important things waiting for you. Sister Xiaoman is right. If you like me, don't be selfish. As long as you are here, I will be happy. Don't you think so, Sister Qianxue?" Lu Ruashi smiled and looked at Ling Qianxue gently. A warm current flashed in Ling Qianxue's heart. As an expert of the demon race, she had always been alone when her clansmen were killed. How could she feel the warmth of the world? "Sister Ruashi." Ling Qianxue was very touched and didn't know how to answer. "I can see that Su Yi has deep feelings for you. You must have done more for Su Yi than Sister Xiaoman and I, and not less than us. I like Su Yi, but I also hope that you will be happy. I can't be happier that someone as powerful as Big Sister likes my man." Lu Ruashi smiled faintly. "Ruashi, thank you." Su Yi's heart was filled with warmth. He choked on his words as his gaze fell on Lu Ruashi. After saying that, Lu Ruashi smiled brightly and placed Su Yi and Ling Qianxue's hands on her palm. "If elder sister Xiaoman knew that we have such a good sister, she would be so happy. Let's call each other sisters from now on." "Yes, Sister Ruashi." Ling Qianxue no longer hesitated and laughed heartily. The two girls quickly became intimate as if they were biological sisters. Their laughter was as sweet as the song of an oriole, extremely pleasant to the ears. Seeing how happy the two of them were, Su Yi's heart was filled with an unprecedented warmth. Qi Feihong lowered his voice as if he had just woken up from a dream. He said softly, "Kid, sometimes I really envy you." The feelings of young people are really enviable. Su Yi curled the corner of his mouth and glanced at Qi Feihong. Qi Feihong in front of him had already recovered his physical body, and his strength at the peak of 9th level Origin Grandmaster also showed signs of breaking through. He said softly, "Why don't I help you break through and find you an old companion in Tai Ching sect?" Suddenly, Qi Feihong rolled his eyes at Su Yi, lowered his hat, and said angrily, "You only know how to joke with me at a time like this." Su Yi, elder sister Xiaoman, is still in seclusion. I'll bring elder sister Qianxue around Yutian Palace. The two girls chatted happily. Ling Qianxue was pulled by Lu Ruashi and also looked at Su Yi with a smile. Looking at Lu Ruashi and Ling Qianxue leaving, Su Yi still had a smile at the corner of his mouth. He glanced at Qi Feihong next to him and chuckled. "Let's go, Uncle Hong. I'll bring you to find your old companion." At this moment, over a dozen rays of light shot into the sky above the tall pavilion. Spiritual energy that covered the sky immediately gathered into an incomparably huge and ferocious light pillar that charged towards Qi Feihong. "Be careful." Seeing this, he squinted his eyes and held Qi Feihong tightly behind him. At the same time, Yi condensed a mysterious hand seal. The beast roar behind him resounded through the world and shook the eardrums. A black phantasm rushed and leaped, roaring again and again, and pounced at the huge light beam. Boom! Tuntin, who was summoned, opened his hands. A thunderbolt light broke through the air and collided with the soul energy. Suddenly, the entire space trembled fiercely. Even the energy of heaven and earth was temporarily isolated. "Chi Fei Hong, give me your life," Suruga shouted. From the collision of the light beams, a fierce sword intent that wanted to prostrate the entire place rushed into the world. In the entire sky, billowing sword waves gushed out. It was so deep that it seemed to want to split one's soul in half. It made one's heart turn cold just by looking at it. "Master," seeing Suruga's endless killing intent, Su-yi was dumbfounded. He signaled Tuntin to go forward and block it. Soon after, he swept his right hand, and a fierce energy poured into Chi Fei Hong's body to help Chi Fei Hong escape. Bang! Between heaven and earth, the sharp sound of the sword resounded through the world. It was like a thunderous sound that shook the world and made one's heart tremble. And in the next instant, when Suruga's sword tip touched Tuntin's arm, his figure turned illusory. In a hazy light, Suruga's figure separated. The other illusory figure shot towards the fleeing Chi Fei Hong. The fierce sword intent descended, and a huge energy like a black hole instantly landed on Chi Fei Hong's body. "No!" Su-yi roared loudly. In front of him, he was already blocked by a dozen or so elders. Just now, when Lu Ruoshi and Ling Qinxue were present, no one made a move. But the moment the two girls left, Guiyue and Suruga immediately gave the order to pursue Chi Fei Hong. "Su, don't make things difficult for us. It's not like you don't know what Chi Fei Hong and the demon-subduing sect have done before." Guiyue's face darkened. His turbid eyes fluctuated continuously, and an irresistible soul energy rushed out. Su-yi's eyes turned steely, and a huge pressure appeared in his heart. On the other side, the sword intent was like a tidal wave. Even if Chi Fei Hong used all his skills, and the huge beast image in front of him to protect him, he still couldn't resist the momentum. Boom! The space around the huge beast image cracked and shattered. Under the terrifying sword intent, the space rippled like a tsunami, turning into endless light that scattered into the world. Killing intent surged in the space, and heaven's might overflowed. Bang! With a final shattering sound, Suruga's two doppelgangers returned to his original body. His long sword overflowed with cold light. He stepped forward, the tip of his sword pointed at Chi Fei Hong, who was lying limp on the ground. Looking at the enemy he hadn't seen for many years, Suruga's hands couldn't help but tremble. His eyes were bloodshot. Suddenly releasing the light, Suruga shouted, "Chi Fei Hong, long time no see." Chapter 2364. Chi Fei Hong, who had been defeated on the ground, had lost all his strength. Chi Fei Hong, who had been the form of a soul for many years, was now pale. He was dispirited as he looked up at Suruga. His little hat had already fallen to the ground. "Suruga, it's been a long time," Chi Fei Hong said coldly. "Master," seeing that Suruga was determined to kill him, Su-yi took a step forward. His eyes widened, but he was once again stopped by Gu, who shouted, "Uncle Hong has been good to your disciple. On account of his relationship with your disciple, please spare his life." Suruga turned around and raised his eyebrows. A violent killing intent and domineering aura erupted like a volcano. He shouted coldly, "How can I forgive you for helping the evildoer? Have you forgotten about Master Qing Tian? Has your wife, Duamu Xiaoman, waited for decades in vain? And me, Suruga's lifetime of hatred, are you going to let it go just like that?" Suruga sucked in a breath of cold air and stared fiercely at Chi Fei Hong. The cold light of his sword cut across Chi Fei Hong's face. Blood flowed down the blade. Seeing this, Su-yi seemed to have lost his mind. He murmured, I can't forget anything. The Long family has done so much evil. How can I forget so much hatred?" As soon as he finished speaking, Su-yi's heart was tangled up. Qi Nu's injury and Shangwan Tianchen were still in the hands of the Long family. No one would be able to forget this enmity. Back then, when Duanmu Qingtian was escaping from being hunted down, Su Kuanga had only saved Duanmu Qingtian's life, but she was also seriously injured. Her meridians were damaged, and her appearance changed drastically. If there was anyone to blame, they could only blame the demon-subduing sect for committing such a heinous crime. Speaking of which, this was a grudge between Suruga and Qi Feihong. Licking his dry lips, he was also a little hesitant. Was it because of the feelings he had with Qi Feihong that caused him to deviate from his path? Countless thoughts flashed through Su Yi's mind. He clenched his fists tightly and gritted his teeth. However, he still remembered what Qi Feihong had said on the peak before the earthquake. Qi Feihong said in front of Ling Qianxue that they were of one mind and one mind to kill the Long family together. But these words, in such an occasion, who would believe it? In the distance, Qi Feihong struggled to support himself with his elbows on the ground. He looked at Su Yi weakly and then looked back at Suruga. What happened back then has long since turned to dust. Now that both you and I are in our twilight years, it's time to put an end to it. But can you listen to me for a moment? Not an explanation, but a heartfelt one. Staring at Qi Feihong, Suruga withdrew his sword after a long while. A sharp aura once again surged in the air. A dying man's words are kind. Let's see what you can say. Suruga's eyes darkened. A cold light flashed past the corners of his eyes as he said coldly. Qi Feihong crawled up from the ground and took a few deep breaths as if a heavy burden had been lifted from his shoulders. After that, he glanced at Su Yi and said, I shouldn't have remained in this world since a long time ago. It's all thanks to Su Yi that I was able to escape calamity. Yes, the demon-subduing sect has done many things for the Long family, but the words of a lowly person carry little weight. In this Tianyin continent, where the strong are always strong, how much can the demon-subduing sect resist? Instantly, Qi Feihong's short body curled up slightly. He looked at Elder Guyue and the rest. Your Yuqian palace seems to have been established overnight and can be independent of the world. What about us? Yuzhou is barren. Do you know how many people worked hard to establish the demon-subduing sect? How can I let it fall into my hands? Hearing Qi Feihong's words, Elder Guyue became a little unnatural. The eyes of the elders behind him flashed. Indeed, as Qi Feihong said, the Yutian palace was detached from the aristocratic families and forces. It was like a sect that had been established overnight. It was so powerful that no one dared to provoke it. The origin of the Yutian palace had always been a mystery in the Tianyin continent. Sister Yuma, do you know the origin of the Yutian palace? Sita Miang looked at the myriad sword alliance's experts behind him and asked Dugayuma in a low voice. Dugayuma did not expect things to develop to this stage. She shook her head and remained silent. Behind her, the myriad sword alliance's experts crossed their arms and exchanged glances. They were confused by the sudden turn of events. Continue talking about yourself. Don't mention the Yutian palace. Guyue frowned and said softly. Qi Feihong nodded, twitched the pale corners of his mouth, and continued. Su Kuanga, I was ordered to kill Duanmu Qingtian back then. I have seen Duanmu Qingtian in your Yutian palace. You can ask him yourself whether I continue to do so or not. I admit that the demon-subduing sect's despicable deeds in the following decades were related to my lack of control. But I just want to say something to you. Ignoring Suruga's powerful aura, Qi Feihong's fighting spirit rose inexplicably. He exchanged glances with Su Yi and said softly, This brat has always been rash. But he taught me one thing. What I don't want to do is not what I want to do. How many people can remain untainted in this chaotic world? Now, I'm willing to use my blood to challenge Draconis. This heart was exchanged for decades of waiting. If you think I deserve to die, I'll surrender. But I don't want you to look at me and the demon-subduing sect like that. Unyielding and unparalleled arrogance. Uncle Hong. Su Yi's gaze trembled. A strong fighting spirit rose from the depths of his heart. Damn it. Why is this old grandpa so brave? I want to cry. Situmyong felt tears welling up his eyes as he looked at Su-yi. On the opposite side, Suruga's cold gaze flickered. He held the tip of his sword for a long time and pointed it at Chi Feihong. After a long time, he finally lowered it. You've taken in a good brother. Suruga's cold gaze turned into helplessness and killing intent. Master, Su-yi exclaimed. He broke free from Gyue and the others and rushed to Uncle Hong's side. He looked at Suruga. Su Kwanga smiled slightly and put away her long sword. The fierce and boundless killing intent also disappeared in an instant. She turned around and said faintly, Chi Feihong, remember what you said today. If there's any falsehood, I'll kill you. Since you've treated Ir well, if there's any falsehood, I'll kill you too. It's the same for everyone. After saying that, Suruga strode forward with his head held high. A chilling sword intent burst out from his body. He glanced at Dugi Yuma and the myriad sword alliance's disciples behind him and snorted. Suruga walked to Elder Gyue and said softly, Brother Gyue, I'm sorry for troubling you today. Let's go and have some tea. I'm old and my back hurts when I move. My pleasure. Brother Kwanga, this way please. Gyue laughed loudly. He glanced at the crowd and paused for a few seconds on the myriad sword alliance. He then led Elder Wang and Suruga to the other side of Zhongjin Front Peak. Chapter 2365. Only Su-yi, Suruga, and the people from the Myriad Sword Alliance were left in the huge Zhongjin Front Peak. Uncle Hong, what you just said doesn't sound like your usual style. Su-yi smiled bitterly. The light on his palms slowly flowed into Chi Feihong's body. Chi Feihong's eyes trembled when the vitality Chi entered his body. He smiled bitterly and said, I've been with you for a long time, and I've regained some of my courage. I'll do my best to fight against the Long family. I'll kill all the dragon sins and restore the reputation of the demon-subduing sect. As soon as he finished speaking, Chi Feihong's gaze turned fierce, and a strand of surging battle intent surged wantonly like raging flames that incinerated the world. Me too. I'll help Junior Granduncle to kill all those bastards. Sister Yuma, don't you agree? Situ Muyang's blood was boiling as he listened to Dugi Yuma. His battle intent surged like a small volcano as he stared at Dugi Yuma. A few experts from the Myriad Sword Alliance coughed and whispered, Miss Yuma, now that there's no one here, can we talk to Sect Leader Su? Dugi Yuma nodded and walked to Chi Feihong's side. She waited for Su-yi to stabilize Chi Feihong's injuries. Miss Yuma, what's the matter? Su-yi slowly opened his eyes, and Chi Feihong stood up and looked at Dugi Yuma. To tell you the truth, the elders of the Sword Alliance have requested that you make a trip to the Myriad Sword Alliance. Dugi Yuma's eyes shone with blue light. She continued when she saw that Su-yi and Chi Feihong did not believe her. Do you still remember the Sword Master inviting you to the Myriad Sword Mountain to refine the demon sword during the Tianfeng ranking battle? Dugi Yuma stared at Su-yi. Su-yi nodded. At that time, it wasn't just Dugu Chung. Even Yimyetian had invited him to the Pagoda Sea of Flames to train his devil sword. Unfortunately, the Sacred Sea of Flames was unable to melt the Crimson Dragon Devil Sword. Situ Muyang stood beside Dugi Yuma and looked at Su-yi with sincerity. Lord Swordmaster wants us to ask you to destroy the demon sword. He also has something important to discuss with you. Immediately, Su-yi's eyes darkened. He exchanged glances with Chi Feihong, and a trace of doubt and suspicion flashed in the depths of his eyes. The war is coming, and the Myriad Sword Alliance is the only one who hasn't expressed their stance yet. Could it be that they're trying to get on my good side? Su-yi muttered to himself as he looked at Situ Muyang and Dugi Yuma. His impression of Dugu Chung started to recollect. Dugu Chung, the leader of the Myriad Sword Alliance, had always been the most cunning among the 5 aristocratic families. There was no free lunch in the world, and Su-yi wouldn't be able to get anything out of Dugu Chung. Dugu Chung had spent a lot of effort to get Situ Muyang and Dugi Yuma to look for him, which made Su-yi suspicious. Naturally, Su-yi wouldn't directly ask Situ Muyang and Dugi Yuma about these doubts. Chi Feihong's voice gradually came from beside him. Su, what do you think? Do you want to go or not? Su Yi took a deep breath and looked into Duga Yuma's eyes. Situ Muyang quickly came up and patted Su Yi's shoulder. He said softly, Junior Martial Uncle, what are you waiting for? The sword master and grandfather must be on your side, so Sister Yuma and I are here to invite you. Sect Master Su, you should know the sword master's intentions. The Myriad Sword Alliance is sincere, and we hope Sect Master Su can accept it. The experts from the Myriad Sword Alliance echoed. Yuma, what do you think? Su Yi didn't answer and looked at Duga Yuma. Duga Yuma was the one who knew the Myriad Sword Alliance the best, so she was very familiar with Dugu Chung and the group of old men. Duga Yuma's eyes moved slightly, and her face was covered with frost. She looked at Su Yi and said, I've never seen the Myriad Sword Alliance put in so much effort this time. The Sword Master isn't someone who can't see the situation clearly. No matter what decision you make, Su Yi, I'll stand on your side. The corners of Su Yi's mouth curled up slightly when he heard this. He immediately asked the Sword Alliance experts behind him, All right, since Miss Yuma has said so, then I'll go. I can't let others look down on me. Su Yi. Su Yi. Duga Yuma was stunned. She didn't expect Su Yi to agree so quickly. In fact, Su Yi was able to win mainly because of Situ Muyang and Duga Yuma. That's great. Junior Martial Uncle, you haven't been to the Myriad Sword Alliance for so many years. I'll accompany you this time. Aren't you cultivating your sword essence? My sword essence was cultivated in the Myriad Sword Mountain. When we form an alliance, you can also cultivate your sword essence in the Myriad Sword Mountain. Situ Muyang was like a little sparrow that kept talking to Su Yi. When Su Yi agreed, Situ Muyang was so excited that he was about to jump up and down. Duga Yuma, who was standing by the side, frowned. She looked at Su Yi with a faint smile, but her heart was filled with worry. Later, Situ Muyang and Duga Yuma stayed in Juqian Palace under Su Yi's arrangement. After Su Yi had made all the necessary arrangements, they headed to the Myriad Sword Alliance together. The night wind blew gently, and the moon was clear. On the path behind the epicenter of the epicenter, Chi Feihong walked in front with his back hunched. He kept muttering to himself, This Dugu Chung is a fence-sitter. I don't believe that he'll be so decisive as to stand on your side. Who knows what he's up to with the Demon Refinement Sword? Su Yi crossed his arms and rested his head on the back of his head. His eyes were unusually bright as he looked at the undulating waves in the forest in the distance. I don't care what he's up to. I've been everywhere. If I can win over the Long family, I'll have the upper hand. After saying that, Su Yi's eyes flashed with coldness. He said seriously, However, if the Myriad Sword Alliance is up to something, I don't mind turning the Myriad Sword Alliance into the second Divine Tiger Sect. The cold, murderous intent lingered in the forest. The moonlight shone on the undulating path, reflecting the silver light. Under the moonlight, Su Yi's face became unusually cold. In Su Yi's heart, he naturally hoped that the Myriad Sword Alliance would make the right choice. When he thought of Situ Muyang's innocent and excited face, he knew that Situ Muyang would be the one who would suffer the most if it came to that. Let's go and see Grandpa and Father first. You can't mention anything about this. Chi Feihong sighed. There was a trace of worry on his haggard face as he nodded heavily. Soon after, the two of them went to the Su family's courtyard under the moonlight. The Su family's courtyard was brightly lit and lively. The return of Su Jingyuan and Su Yi made the Su family's courtyard, which had not been lively for a long time, as if it was the new year. Chapter 2366. Su family's courtyard. Su Yi and Chi Feihong walked in at the same time. Su Jingyuan and Su Jingting put down their bowls and chopsticks and happily walked up to them. The Su and Lu families were now living in Yuqian Palace. With these old friends, Su Yintian was very happy every day, and his spirit was much better than before. Iya, Su Yintian laughed and sat at the head of the table. His beard was white, but his spirit was abnormally hale and hearty. Grandfather, Su Yi's gaze swept across the crowd, and he smiled. He greeted his father, uncle, father-in-law, and the others one by one. Of course, Su Yi also introduced Qi Fei Hong to everyone. When they heard that Qi Fei Hong was the person who accompanied Su Yi through life and death many times, they couldn't help but look at Qi Fei Hong with respect. Seeing that Qi Fei Hong was about the same age as Su Yun Tian, the straightforward Su Yun Tian directly pulled Qi Fei Hong to his side, and the two began to drink happily. Looking at the happy Su and Lu families, Su Yi's heart was filled with warmth as the painful memories of Man Cheng were no longer visible on their faces. The happier they were, the more determined Su Yi was. The matter of going to the Myriad Sword Alliance must not be told, but there were two people he must tell. One was Lu Ruoxi, and the other was Ling Qinxue. Duan Mu Xiaoman was still in seclusion. He might not be able to see her after returning from the Myriad Sword Alliance, so there was no need for Su Yi to mention it. After asking everyone, Lu Ruoxi and Ling Qinxue were strolling around the Guanlan Pavilion at the back of the mountain. Su Yi informed everyone and went to the Guanlan Pavilion. The moon was white and the wind was clear. The waterfall flowed down from the mountain. Before he reached the Guanlan Pavilion, Su Yi heard two silvery bell-like laughter passing through the space. It was very pleasant to hear. What's so funny? Tell me about it. Su Yi stood at a high place, his eyes full of smiles as he looked at Lu Ruoxi and Ling Qinxue. Gazing at the two women, one had a graceful figure. Her figure was ethereal like a goddess, and two crescent moons hung on her snow-white face. The other had a jade nose, jade cheeks, delicate dimples that were sparkling like jade, and a waist that was slender like a willow tree. She was so beautiful that it was enough to make all men in the world suffocate. The two of them stood under the moonlight, and their beauty was already the most beautiful scene in the world. Hearing Su Yi's voice, the corner of Ling Qinshue's mouth curled up slightly. Her pink cheeks slightly blushed, and her eyes were like a serene, immortal orchid at the bottom of a deep valley. She said in a low voice, "We were talking about your childhood scandal. I didn't expect that Su Yi, who has always been eloquent, would have such a secret." "My business." Su Yi's gaze flickered. Lu Ruoxi was his childhood sweetheart. Yet, she did not even want to talk about him. "Ruoxi, what did you say about me? Why can't I remember?" Su Yi put his hands on his waist and pretended to reprimand Lu Ruoxi, who was staring at him with affection. Seeing this, Lu Ruoxi held Ling Qinshue's arm even tighter. Her lips curled up slightly as she complained, "Why should I tell you the secret between me and Qinsue? Sister Qinsue, don't you think so?" Ling Qinsue, who was at the side, chuckled and snorted at Su Yi with Lu Ruoxi. Then they laughed tacitly. Su Yi could not help but smile. This pair of sisters had only known each other for a few hours, and they actually treated him as an outsider. If he went out for a period of time, he was afraid that he would not be able to keep his position as the head of the family. "All right, you guys are ganging up to bully me. Then I'll leave and not come back." Su Yi raised his head and turned to look at the moon that was like a jade plate. Swoosh! Swoosh! Ling Qinshuo and Lu Ruoxi swept past and quickly came to Su Yi's side. They held on to Su Yi's arms from both sides. Ling Qinshuo said, "Stingy guy, are you really angry?" "Yes, I'm just playing with you. Where do you want to go when you just came back?" "You're not allowed to go anywhere." Lu Ruoxi's beautiful face hid a trace of nervousness and seriousness in the depths of her eyes. She unconsciously held on to Su Yi even tighter, as if she was afraid that Su Yi would leave. Su Yi raised his eyebrows and shrugged helplessly. There was a beautiful moon in front of him, and he had a beautiful woman by his side. Only a fool would go out and take risks. However, there were some things that had to come. After letting out a long sigh, Su Yi told Ling Qinshuo about the purpose of Situ Muyang and Duga Yuma's visit. He also told them that he had already agreed to go to the Myriad Sword Alliance. "Dugu Cheng doesn't look like a good person," Ling Qinshuo said coldly. In Su Yi's spiritual consciousness, Ling Qinshuo had seen Dugu Cheng before. His deep eyes hid shrewdness and cunning. Sister Qinshuo said that Dugu Chung isn't a good person. Su, you don't have to go. Lu Ruashi felt wronged. Her eyebrows moved slightly as she pressed her pink cheeks against Su Yi's arm. She was a little sad. Su Yi shook his head. He only had the Yun family, the Thunderfire Holy Palace, the demon-subduing sect, the Chaos Territory, and the Heavenly Palace. Whether or not the remaining miscellaneous forces combined would be able to contend against the Long family was a problem. After so many years of painstaking effort, the Long family's strength was so terrifying that even Yun Zhongli and Yin Yet Yin did not dare to directly cause trouble. Moreover, the Long family had the extraterritorial elite and various top forces, including the Sky Dragon sect, under them. At this time, if Su Yi could win over the Myriad Sword Alliance, victory would be in his hands. Then I'll go with you. With me and Tuntin, you shouldn't be in danger. Ling Chinchua looked at Su Yi with indescribable worry in her eyes. Su Yi turned his head and looked at Ling Chinchua. In the end, he still chose to shake his head. After you resurrect, you have more important things to do. Have you forgotten? Su Yi said lightly. Ling Chinchua nodded, indicating that she knew what Su Yi was talking about. Ling Lanin and Su Tianke were looking for the secret of the immemorial catastrophe. Now that he had resurrected, he naturally had to help Ling Miaoyin and the others who were still in the demon aura forest recover their physical bodies. The serene flame grass, glazed sky stamen, and moon-devouring Bodhi vermin had been planted in the spiritual field. The spiritual materials grew in the spiritual field over and over again. The current quantity and the leftover from refining were enough to resurrect Ling Miaoyin and the others. What Ling Chinchua had to do was wait for Dan Honggong to finish refining all the materials and bring them back to the demon aura forest. But you're also very important, Ling Chinchua said anxiously. Su Yi broke free from their arms and took a step forward. He turned around and looked at Ling Chinchua and Lu Ruashi. The battle with the Long family is inevitable. Our forces must be gathered immediately. Perhaps after I return, the battle will erupt. Therefore, the time that Chinchua gave you is not enough. Su Yi told the two that Chi Feihong would not follow him to the Myriad Sword Alliance. He also had to gather the Soul Sect and Martial Arts Sect and prepare to go to the Demon-Subduing Sect. At the same time, he had to go to the Chaos region to inform the Green Emperor and the others that the cultivation in the Chaos region was about to end. The time to test their strength had finally arrived. Chapter 2367. Therefore, Chinchua, what you need to do is urgent. With Tuntin in the Myriad Sword Alliance, I'll be fine. Su Yi smiled. He tried his best not to let Ling Chinchua and Lu Ruashi notice the seriousness in his eyes. He had already reached the first stage of the Origin Dominion realm. Coupled with the desolate engulfing heavenly beast, it would not be easy for the Myriad Sword Alliance to play any tricks. All right, be careful in the Myriad Sword Alliance. I'll rush back from the Demon Aura Forest as soon as possible. If the Myriad Sword Alliance is up to no good, the Nine Spiritual Links clan is not to be trifled with. Suddenly, Ling Chinchua shot out a cold light. A surge of demonic aura swept across the sky and engulfed the void. Su Yi nodded. Su Xiaoshui was still searching for the secrets of the Archean calamity in Sky Barbaric Country to retrieve his memories. Ling Lanin and Su Tianke were also in the extraterritorial region. The remaining Duanmu Qingtian and Duanmu Xiaoman were recuperating while the other was in seclusion. Before the war, all the combat forces had to be gathered together. The war was about to begin. Under the bright moonlight, Ling Chinchua's gaze was grave. Lu Ruashi's face was also filled with worry. She softly said to Su Yi, Su Yi, can you bring me there? No. Su Yi frowned and rejected her without hesitation. Lu Ruashi immediately looked at Ling Chinchua for help. Ling Chinchua pursed her lips slightly. Lu Ruashi pleaded, Su Yi, I'm your wife, but I've been hiding in the Yuqian Palace. I'm not a weak woman who will only wait for your return. Lu Ruashi was the ninth holy maiden of the sacred mountain. However, after she arrived at the Yuqian Palace, she was heavily protected by her father and Duanmu Xiaoman. Lu Ruashi once thought that she could only wait for Su Yi's return and could not help Su Yi at all. A sense of helplessness and inferiority took root in her heart. Sister Qin Shue has something important to do, but I'm fine. I can go with you. I can take care of myself. Lu Ruashi frowned as she looked at Su Yi. Instantly, Su Yi's heart ached. A trace of helplessness and worry flashed across his deep eyes. In the end, he shook his head. Why? Lu Ruashi was so anxious that she was about to cry. She heard Su Yi say, Ruashi, there are some things that I can't tell you. However, you're the most precious thing to me. I can't let any harm come to you. After saying that, Su Yi walked toward Lu Ruashi and extended his palm. Lu Ruashi's face immediately turned cold. Golden light flickered beneath her feet as she tore through space and dodged the attack. I'm not a useless person. Beside you, Su Yi, I'm not a little girl who only knows how to wait and hope. Lu Ruashi's tears streaked across the night sky after she finished speaking. The golden light pressed down on the sky, and Lu Ruashi's beautiful figure blended into the night sky. It's been hard on you. Ling Qinshu sighed softly as she looked at Su Yi. Su Yi stared blankly in the direction that Lu Ruashi disappeared. His eyes were full of seriousness. He definitely could not let Lu Ruashi know that she was a rainbow exquisite egg. If Lu Ruashi knew the truth, the matter of her mother being killed by the foreign experts would be exposed. Her mother's death was the real reason why Lu Ruashi had painstakingly cultivated for so many years. At that time, Lu Ruashi would not be afraid of the Long family. He was only afraid that the foreign experts would do the same evil thing to Lu Ruashi. Su Yi would definitely not allow such a consequence to happen. He would not allow even the slightest possibility of happening. This was the real reason why Lu Zongyuan and Duanmu Xiaoman protected Lu Ruashi. However, Su Yi could only bury these thoughts in his heart. After a long sigh, Su Yi finally shook his head. He would rather hurt Lu Ruashi's heart now than see her get hurt in the slightest. Qin Shue, the person who understands me the most, is indeed you. Su Yi bitterly smiled. Ling Qinshu walked forward and whispered softly. She gently hugged Su Yi tightly. In the night sky, the atmosphere between the two gradually began to stir. You are also my most precious thing. You can't be hurt either. I will rush back as soon as possible. Su Yi nodded and narrowed his eyes. His abyss-like eyes were fixed on the depths of the night sky. He softly said, You will take care of Ruashi tonight. Behind him, Ling Qinshue's amber eyes revealed a trace of gentleness as she meekly nodded. A few days passed by slowly. Qi Feihong and Ling Qinshu also left the palace according to Su Yi's arrangements. They agreed that after Su Yi returned from the Myriad Sword Alliance, regardless of whether the Myriad Sword Alliance agreed to help him or not, the battle between Su Yi and the Long family would begin. During this period, Su Yi carried out the final special training for the people of the Tianyao school. He gave the spiritual liquid in the ancient bell to Hu Qi and the others so that they could quickly cultivate under the guidance of Long Pasan and Jun Haoyan. When Shangwan Shiwei heard that Su Yi was leaving the palace again, she was also very nervous. However, after knowing that her father, Shangwan Tianshun, was about to return, Shangwan Shiwei's heart gradually relaxed. Of course, this was all a white lie from Su Yi. In his heart, he was already very anxious. For a few days, Lu Ruashi acted like a child and didn't see anyone. Even when she rested at night, she didn't let Su Yi into her room. Su Yi knew Lu Ruashi's temper very well. She was soft on the outside, but tough on the inside. However, even if she was angry, Su Yi would never bring Lu Ruashi out. Before leaving, Su Yi specially instructed Lu Zongyuan and the others to strictly protect Lu Ruashi. Just in case, Su Yi also brought Jun Haoyan this time. Elder Gyue also wanted to come along, but Su Yi still refused. Firstly, Xiaoman wasn't here, and the gathering of the battle forces of the imperial palace needed Gyue to manage. Secondly, he was only going to refine the demon sword. If he brought so many people, wouldn't it be a joke to the Myriad Sword Alliance? They only invited Situ Muyang and Dugayuma. In front of the Archkay Lake, Situ Muyang was excited to finally be able to return to the Sword Alliance. He pulled Su Yi and chatted happily. Behind him, Jun Haoyan and Dugayuma stood quietly with infinite depth in their eyes. Soon after, everyone headed in the direction of the Myriad Sword Alliance. From the Dragon Armor to Geomancy map, Su Yi knew that the Myriad Sword Alliance was in the valley east of the Immortal Sword Continent. The terrain of the Cloud region was quite high, and the journey to the Myriad Sword Alliance was quite long. After a few days of teleportation, Su Yi and the others finally arrived at the Immortal Sword Continent. As soon as they set foot on the ground, Su Yi and the others didn't enter the nearby cities. Instead, they went straight to the valley in the east. Passing through forest after forest and mountain after mountain, the speed of Su Yi and the others could be said to have reached an extreme. Everyone who was walking close to the ground instantly stopped when they felt a trace of vitality aura. "What's wrong?" Situ Muyang looked solemn and asked softly. Su Yi looked around vigilantly, and his eyes instantly became gloomy. He said softly, "Someone's here. Their aura is hidden very well. It should be a powerhouse." Suddenly, everyone, including the powerhouses, became nervous. Su Yi, who suddenly opened his eyes, stretched out his right hand, and a fierce flame pillar grabbed at the forest. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.